Look at me, I'm LML. No, you aren't. You don't know how to change your name. You can't be LML. Only I am LML. The Bear and the Maiden Fair. Oh, are we doing song requests already? Lady Rohanne is a femme fatale. Welcome, friends, to the Lady Rohanne stream. The Red Widow, as she is called. Rohan of House Webber. Later Osgrey, and then Lannister, and then there's a mystery. There's a mystery afoot, folks. So let's begin, as we are wont to do, with a quote reading. Yeah, I can sing The Bear and the Maiden Fair. I could definitely do that. Maybe if we get enough super chats, I can sing Bear and the Maiden Fair. So there are 3 Rohanne Webber scenes. Only 3. She steals all of them, though. Here's the first one. Coldmoat came as somewhat of a disappointment after all that Sir Eustace had said of it. Compared to Storm's End or Highgarden, or other lordly seats that Dunk had seen, it was a modest castle. But it was a castle, not a fortified watchtower. Its crenellated outer walls stood 30 feet high, with towers at each corner, each one half again the size of Standfast. From every turret and spire, the black banners of Webber hung heavy. Stop texting me. Let's see here. Where was I? Of course, nobody ever texts me. Like, literally nobody ever texts me. Then I go live and I get 5 text messages. All right. Modest castle, not a fortified watchtower. Its crenellated outer wall stood 30 feet high, with towers at each corner, each one half again the size of Standfast. From every turret and spire, the black banners of Webber hung heavy, each emblazoned with a spotted spider upon a silvery web. Sir, Egg said, the water. Look where it goes. The ditch ended under Coldmoat's eastern walls, spilling down into the moat, from which the castle took its name. The gurgle of the falling water made Dunk grind his teeth. She will not have my checky water. Come, he said to Egg. Over the arch of the main gate, a row of spider banners drooped in the still air, above the older sigil carved deep into the stone. Centuries of wind and weather had worn it down, but the shape of it was still distinct, a rampant lion made of checkered squares. The gates beneath were open. As they clattered across the drawbridge, Dunk made note of how low the moat had fallen. 6 feet at least, he judged. 2 spearmen barred their way at the portcullis. One had a big black beard, and one did not. The beard demanded to know their purpose here. My lord of Osgrey sent me to treat with Lady Webber, Dunk told him. I am called Sir Duncan the Tall. Well, I knew you wasn't Bennis, said the beardless guard. We would have smelled him coming. He had a missing tooth and a spotted spider badge sewn above his heart. The beard was squinting suspiciously at Dunk. No one sees her ladyship unless the Longinch gives his leave. You come with me. Your stable boy can stay with the horses. I'm a squire, not a stable boy, Egg insisted. Are you blind or only stupid? The beardless guard broke into laughter. The beard put the point of his spear to the boy's throat. Say that again. Dunk gave Egg a clout in the ear. No, shut your mouth and tend the horses. He dismounted. I'll see Sir Lucas now. The beard lowered his spear. He's in the yard. They passed beneath the spiked iron portcullis and under a murder hole before emerging in the outer ward. Hounds were barking in the kennels, and Dunk could hear singing coming from the leaded glass windows of a 7-sided sept. In front of the smithy, a blacksmith was shoeing a warhorse, with a apprentice boy assisting. Nearby, a squire was loosing shafts at archery butts, while a freckled girl with a long braid matched him shot for shot. The quintain was spinning too, as half a dozen knights in quilted padding took their turns knocking it around. They found Sir Lucas Longage amongst the watchers at the quintain, speaking with a great fat septon who was sweating worse than Dunk, a round white pudding of a man in robes as damp as if he'd worn them in his bath. Inchfield, sorry, I got an itchy mustache today, just shaved. Inchfield was a lance beside him, stiff and straight and very tall, though not so tall as Dunk. 6 feet and 7 inches, Dunk judged, and each inch prouder than the last. Though he wore black silk and cloth of silver, Sir Lucas looked as cool as if he were walking on the wall. My lord, the guard hailed him, this one comes from the chicken tower for an audience with her ladyship. The septon turned first with a hoot of delight that made Dunk wonder if he were drunk. And what is this, a hedge knight? You have large hedges in the reach. The septon made a sign of blessing. May the warrior fight ever at your side. I am Septon Sefton, an unfortunate name, but mine own. And you? Sir Duncan the Tall. A modest fellow, this one, the Septon said to Sir Lucas. Were I as large as him, I'd call myself Sir Sefton the Immense. Sir Sefton the Tower. Sir Sefton with the clouds about his ears. His moon face was flushed, and there were wine stains on his robe. Sir Lucas studied Dunk. He was an older man, 40 at least, perhaps as old as 50, sinewy rather than muscular, with a remarkably ugly face. His lips were thick, his teeth are a yellow tangle, his nose broad and fleshy, his eyes protruding. And he is angry, Dunk sensed, even before the man said, Hedge knights are beggars with blades at best, outlaws at worst. Begone with you. We want none of your sort here. Dunk's face darkened. Sir Eustace Osgrey sent me from Standfast to treat with the lady of the castle. Osgrey? The Septon glanced at Longinch. Osgrey of the Chequy Lion? I thought House Osgrey was extinguished. Near enough as makes no matter. The old man is the last of them. We let him keep a crumbling tower house a few leagues east. Sir Lucas frowned at Dunk. If Sir Eustace wants to talk with her ladyship, let him come himself. His eyes narrowed. You were the one with Bennis at the dam. Don't trouble to deny it. I ought to hang you. 7 save us. The Septon dabbed sweat from his brow with his sleeve. A brigand, is he? A big one. Sir, repent your evil ways, and the mother will have mercy. The Septon's pious plea was undercut when he farted. Oh dear, forgive my whins, sir. That's what come of beans and barley bread. I am not a brigand, Dunk told the two of them with all the dignity that he could muster. The Longinch was unmoved by the denial. Do not presume upon my patience, sir, if you are a sir. Run back to your chicken tower and tell Sir Eustace to deliver up Sir Bennis Brown stench. If he spares us the trouble of winkling him out of Standfast, her ladyship might be more inclined to clemency. I will speak with her ladyship about Sir Bennis, and the trouble at the dam, and about the stealing of our water, too. Stealing, said Sir Lucas. Say that to our lady, and you'll be swimming in a sack before the sun has set. Are you quite certain that you wish to see her? The only thing that Dunk was certain of was that he wanted to drive his fist through Lucas Longinch's crooked yellow teeth. I've told you what I want. Oh, let him speak with her, the Septon urged. What harm could it do? Sir Duncan has had a long ride beneath this beastly sun. Let the fellow have his say. Sir Lucas studied Dunk again. Our Septon is a godly man. Come, I will thank you to be brief. He strode across the yard, and Dunk was forced to hurry after him. The doors of the castle sept had opened, and worshippers were streaming down the steps. There were knights and squires, a dozen children, several old men, 3 septas in white robes and hoods, and one soft, fleshy lady of high birth, garbed in a gown of dark blue damask, trimmed with Moorish lace. I don't really traffic in damask and Moorish lace, so you have to forgive me. So long its hems were trailing in the dirt. Dunk judged her to be 40. Beneath a spun silver net, her auburn hair was piled high, but the reddest thing about her was her face. My lady, Sir Lucas said, when they stood before her and her septas, this hedge knight claims to bring a message from Sir Eustace Osgrey. Will you hear it? If you wish it, Sir Lucas. She peered at Dunk so hard that she could not help but recall Egg's talk of sorcery, that he could not help but recall Egg's talk of sorcery. Ah! She peered at Dunk so hard that he could not help but recall Egg's talk of sorcery. I don't think this one bathes in blood to keep her beauty. The widow was stout and square, with an oddly pointed head that her hair could not quite conceal. Her nose was too big and her mouth too small. She did have 2 eyes, he was relieved to see, but all thought of gallantry had abandoned Dunk by then. Sir Eustace bid me talk with you concerning the recent troubles at your dam. She blinked. The dam, you say? A crowd was gathering about them. Dunk could feel unfriendly eyes upon him. The stream, he said, the Chequy water. Your ladyship built a dam across it. Oh, I'm quite sure I haven't, she replied. Why, I have been at my devotions all morning, sir. Dunk heard Sir Lucas chuckle. I did not mean to say that your ladyship built the dam herself, only that without the water our crops will die. The small folk have beans and barley in the fields, and melons. Truly? I am very fond of melons. Her small mouth made a happy bow. What sort of melons are they? Dunk glanced uneasily at the ring of faces and felt his own face growing hot. Something is amiss here. Longinch is playing me for a fool. Milady, could we continue our discussion in some more private place? A silver says, the great oath means to bed her, someone japed, and a roar of laughter went up all around him. The lady cringed away, half in terror, and raised both hands to shield her face. One of the septas moved quickly to her side and put a protective arm around her shoulders. And what is all this merriment? The voice cut through the laughter, cool and firm. Will no one share the jape? Sir Knight, why are you troubling my good sister? It was the girl he had seen earlier at the archery butts. She had a quiver of arrows on one hip and held a longbow that was just as tall as she was, which wasn't very tall. If Dunk was an inch shy of 7 feet, the archer was shy an inch of 5. He could have spanned her waist with 2 of his hands. Her red hair was bound up in a braid so long it brushed past her thighs, and she had a dimpled chin, a snub nose, and a light spray of freckles across her cheeks. Forgive us, Lady Rohan. The speaker was a pretty young lord with a Caswell centaur embroidered on his doublet. This great oaf took the Lady Helicent for you. Dunk looked from one lady to the other. You are the Red Widow? He heard himself blurt out. But you are too young? The girl tossed her longbow to the lanky lad he'd seen her shooting with. I am 25, as it happens. Or was it small, you meant to say? Pretty. It was pretty. Dunk did not know where that had come from, but he was glad it came. He liked her nose, the strawberry blonde color of her hair, and the small but well-shaped breasts beneath her leather jerkin. I thought you'd be, they said you were 4 times a widow, so... My first husband died when I was 10. He was 12, my father's squire, ridden down upon the red grass field. My husbands seldom linger long, I fear. The last died in the spring. That was what they always said of those who had perished during the great spring sickness 2 years past. He died in the spring. Many tens of thousands had died in the spring, amongst them a wise old king and 2 young princes full of promise. I'm sorry for all your losses, my lady. A gallantry, you lunk. Give her a gallantry. I want to say, your gown. Gown? She glanced down at her boots and breeches, loose linen tunic and leather jerkin. I wear no gown. Your hair, I meant, it's soft, and how would you know that, sir? If you had ever touched my hair, I think I should remember. Not soft, Dunk said miserably. Red, I meant to say. Your hair is very red. Very red, sir. Oh, not as red as your face, I hope. She laughed, and the onlookers laughed with her. All but Sir Lucas Longinch. My lady, he broke in. This man is one of the standfasts of sellswords. He was with Bennis of the Brown Shield when he attacked your diggers at the dam and carved up Wolmer's face. Old Osgrey sent him to treat with you. He did, my lady. I am called Sir Duncan the Tall. Sir Duncan the Dim, more like, said a bearded knight, who wore the threefold thunderbolt of Laygood. More guffaws sounded. Even Lady Helicent had recovered herself enough to give a chuckle. Did the courtesy of Coldmoat die with my lord father? The girl asked. No, not a girl, a woman grown. How did Sir Duncan come to make such an error, I wonder? Dunk gave Inchfield an evil look. The fault was mine. Was it? The Red Widow looked Dunk over from his heels up to his head, though her gaze lingered longest on his chest. A tree and a shooting star. I have never seen those arms before. She touched his tunic, tracing a limb of his elm tree with 2 fingers. And painted, not sewn. The Dornish paint their silks, I've heard, but you look too big to be a Dornishman. Not all Dornishmen are small, my lady. Dunk could feel her fingers through his silk. Her hand was freckled, too. I bet she's freckled all over. His mouth was oddly dry. I spent a year in Dorne. Do all the oaks grow so tall there? She said, as her fingers traced a tree limb round his heart. It's meant to be an elm, my lady. I shall remember. She drew her hand back, solemn. The ward is too hot and dusty for a conversation. Septon, show Sir Duncan to my audience chamber. It would be my great pleasure, good sister. Our guest will have a thirst. You may send for a flagon of wine as well. Must I? The fat man beamed. Well, if it please you. I will join you as soon as I have changed. Unhooking her belt and quiver, she handed them to her companion. I want Mr. Sarek as well. Sir Lucas, go ask him to attend me. I will bring him at once, my lady. The look she gave her castellan was cool. No need. I know you have many duties to perform about the castle. It will suffice if you send Maester Carrick to my chambers. Okay, so then we got, there's a little bit more. Milady, Dunk called after her. My squire was made to wait by the gates. Might he join us as well? Your squire? When she smiled, she looked a girl of 5 and 10, not a woman of 25. pretty girl full of mischief and laughter. If it please you, certainly. So then a few more pages pass, and the Septon's rattling off about some world building and the Targaryens and the spring sickness and so on and so forth. First of all, let me just, thirsty much, exactly. The thirst in that scene is like palpable, right? Palpable. They're both thirsty. Yeah, no, it's great. Like Dunk's like, oh, his mouth was dry for some reason. Not quite sure why. It's pretty great stuff. I love the palpable the palpable tension here between Dunk and Rohan. It's definitely it's pretty hot. Yes, it's burning up the pages. And that's one of the reasons why she's a great character, because she brings out this great side of Dunk, right? And it only gets worse. So again, they keep talking about stuff, and then she comes back to the audience chamber, and that's where we're going to pick up the narrative. I don't want to read. The Septon's a bit long-winded. So yes. I'm going to cut in with the Septon starting to spill all of Lady Rohan's sort of business to Dunk. So it says, okay, let me go right here. The Septon pushed himself to his feet. My good sister will be a while yet, as with all great ladies. The first 10 gowns she tries will be found not to suit her mood. Will you take more wine? I was a chauvinist too, of course. Without waiting for an answer, he refilled both cups. The lady I mistook, said Dunk, anxious to speak of something else. Is she your sister? We are all children of the Seven, sir, but apart from that, dear me, no. Lady Helicent was sister to Sir Roland Ufring, Lady Rohan's fourth husband, who died in the spring. My brother was his predecessor, Sir Simon Staunton, who had the great misfortune to choke upon a chicken bone. Coldmoat crawls with revenants, it must be said. The husbands die, yet their kin remain, to drink my lady's wines and eat her sweetmeats, like a plague of plump pink locusts, done up in silk and velvet. He wiped his mouth. And yet she must be wed again, and soon. Must, said Dunk. Her Lord Father's will demands it. Lord Wyman wanted grandsons to carry on his line. When he sickened, he tried to wed her to the long inch, so he might die knowing that she had a strong man, though he might die knowing she had a strong man to protect her, but Rohan refused to have him. His lordship took his vengeance in his will. If she remains unwed on the 2nd anniversary of her father's passing, Coldmoat and its lands pass to his cousin Wendell. Perhaps you glimpsed him in the yard, a short man with a goiter on his neck, much given to flatulence. Though it is small of me to say so, I am cursed with excess wind myself. Everyone's farting around here. It's a stinky place. Be that as it may, Sir Wendell is grasping and stupid, but his lady wife is Lord Rowan's sister. Lord Rowan, by the way, is the overlord of both Standfast and Coldmoat. So that's why the Lord Rowan is important. She whelps as often as he farts. Their sons are quite as bad as he is, their daughters worse, and all of them have begun to count the days. Lord Rowan has upheld the will, so her ladyship has only until the next new moon. Why has she waited so long? Dunk wondered aloud. The Septon shrugged. If truth be told, there has been a dearth of suitors. My good sister is not hard to look upon, you will have noticed, and a stout castle and broad lands add to her charms. You would think that younger sons and landless knights would swarm about her ladyship like flies. Gosh, she almost sounds like a corpse. Queen. Flies around, but we'll get to the symbolism later. In any case, put a pin in that. You would be wrong. The 4 dead husbands make them wary, and there are those who will say she is barren too, though never in her hearing, unless they yearn to see the inside of a crow cage. She has carried 2 children to term, a boy and a girl, but neither lived to see a name day. Those few who are not put off by talk of poisonings and sorcery want no part of the long inch. Lord Wyman charged him on his deathbed to protect his daughter from unworthy suitors, which he has taken to mean all suitors. Any man who means to have her hand would need to face his sword first. He finished his wine and set the cup aside. That is not to say there has been no one. Clayton Caswell and Simon Laygood have been the most persistent, though they have seemed more interested in her lands than in her person. Were I given to wagering, I should place my gold on Gerald Lannister. He has yet to put in an appearance, but they say he is golden-haired and quick of wit, and more than 6 feet tall. And then Rohan walks in and interrupts and says, and Lady Webber is much taken with his letters. The lady in question stood in the doorway, beside a homely young maester with a great hooked nose. You would lose your wager, good brother. Gerald will never willingly forsake the pleasures of Lannisport and the splendor of Casterly Rock for some little lordship. He has more influence as Lord Tybalt's brother and advisor than he could ever hope for as my husband. As for the others, Sir Simon would need to sell off half my land to pay his debts, and Sir Clayton trembles like a leaf whenever the Longinch deigns to look his way. Besides, he is prettier than I am, and you, Septon, have the biggest mouth in all Westeros. A large belly requires a large mouth, said Septon Sefton, utterly unabashed. Else it will soon become a small one. Are you the Red Widow? Egg asked, astonished. I'm near as tall as you are. Another boy made that same observation not half a year ago. I sent him to the rack to make him taller. When Lady Rohanne settled onto the high seat on the dais, she pulled her braid forward over her left shoulder. It was so long that the end of it lay coiled in her lap like a sleeping cat. Sir Duncan, I should not have teased you in the yard when you were trying so hard to be gracious. It was only that you blushed so red. Was there no girl to tease you in the village where you grew so tall? The village was King's Landing. He did not mention Flea Bottom. There were girls, but the sort of teasing that went on in Flea Bottom sometimes involved cutting off a toe. I expect they were afraid to tease you. Lady Rohanne stroked her braid. No doubt they were frightened of your size. Do not think ill of Lady Hellicent, I pray you. My good sister is a simple creature, but she has no harm in her. For all her piety, she could not dress herself without her septus. It was not her doing. The mistake was mine. You lie most gallantly. I know it was Sir Lucas. He is a man of cruel humors, and you offended him on sight. How? Dunk said, puzzled. I never did him any harm. She smiled a smile that made him wish that she was plainer. I saw you standing with him. You're taller by a hand, or near enough. It has been a long while since Sir Lucas met anyone he could not look down on. How old are you, sir? Near 20, if it please my lady. Dunk liked the ring of 20, though most like he was a year younger, maybe 2. No one knew for certain, least of all him. He must have had a father and a mother like everyone else, but he'd never known them, not even their names, and no one in Flea Bottom had ever much cared when he'd been born or to whom. Are you as strong as you appear? How strong do I appear, my lady? Oh, strong enough to annoy Sir Lucas. He is my castellan, though not by choice. Not by my choice. Like Coldmoat, he is a legacy of my father. Did you come to knighthood on some battlefield, Sir Duncan? Your speech suggests that you are not born of noble blood, if you will forgive my saying so. I was born of gutter blood. A hedge knight named Sir Arlen of Penitry took me on to squire for him when I was just a boy. He taught me chivalry and the arts of war. And this same Sir Arlen knighted you? Dunk shuffled his feet. One of his boots was half unlaced, he saw. No one else was like to do it. And this, by the way, if I could just break in, they do this over and over with Dunk. He was never knighted. This is the whole thing about Dunk, of course, is that he's actually not a knight. He was never knighted. He like Sir Arlen was going to do it, and then he died. And then Dunk just started saying he was a knight. But when people ask him, he doesn't actually lie. He said, well, he's like, oh, well, no one else was going to do it. So totally, like, you could tell George, instead of George writing that he looks down at his feet, it's like, oh, one of his shoes he noticed was untied. It's like, okay. He wasn't knighted. Of course, that the joke is that Dunk embodies the values of knighthood more than any of the actual knights. The same thing with Brienne. She's not an actual knight, but she's the one keeping up the vows, you know, so running theme with George and knighthood. Anyways, I just thought that was funny. I wanted to point it out. So it says, where is Sir Arlen now? He died. He raised his eyes. He could lace up his boot later. I buried him on a hillside. Did he fall valiantly in battle? There were rains. He caught a chill. Old men are frail, I know. I learned that from my second husband. I was 13 when we wed. He would have been 55 on his next name day had he lived long enough to see it. But when he was half a year in the ground, I gave him a little son, but the stranger came for him as well. The Septon said his father wanted him beside him. What do you think, sir? Well, said Dunk hesitantly, that might be, my lady. Nonsense, she said. The boy was born too weak. Such a tiny thing. He scarce had strength enough to nurse. Still, the gods gave his father 55 years. You would think they might have granted more than 3 days to the son. There's some pretty good Jesus language going on here. We will get into the symbolism. We're gonna do the plot first. So let's see here. You would. Dunk knew little unless about the gods. He went to the sept sometimes and prayed to the warrior to lend strength to his arms, but elsewise he let the seven be. I'm sorry your Sir Arlen died, she said, and sorrier still that you took service with Sir Eustace. And all old men are not the same, Sir Duncan. You would do well to go home to Pennytree. I have no home but where I swear my sword. Dunk had never seen Pennytree. He couldn't even say if it was in the reach. By the way, it's between the teats. The two mountains that are called Barbara's Teats or Missy's Teats, between the Bracken and Blackwood lands. Pennytree is the village right in between those two hills, which is actually important for symbolism's sake, but just FYI. Swear it here, then. The times are uncertain. I have need of knights. You look as though you have a healthy appetite, Sir Duncan. More thirst. How many chickens can you eat? At Coldmoat, you would have your fill of warm pink meat and sweet fruit tarts. Yes, definitely some thirst and hunger. Your squire looks in need of sustenance as well. He is so scrawny that all his hair has fallen out. We'll have him share a cell with other boys of his own age. He'll like that. My master-at-arms can train him in the arts of war. I'll train him, said Dunk defensively. Jesus, Dunk. And who else? Bennis? Old Osgray? The chickens? There had been days when Dunk had set Egg to chasing chickens. It helps make him quicker, he thought. But he knew if he had said it, she would laugh. She was distracting him with her snub nose and her freckles. Dunk had to remind himself of why Sir Eustace had sent him here. My sword is sworn to my Lord Osgray, my lady, and that's the way it is. So be it, sir. Let us speak of less pleasant matters. Lady Rohanne gave her braid a tug. We do not suffer attacks on Coldmoat or its people, so tell me why I should not have you sewn in a sack. I came to parley, he reminded her, and I have drunk your wine. The taste still lingered in his mouth, rich and sweet. So far it had not poisoned him. Perhaps it was the wine that made him bold. And you don't have a sack big enough for me. To his relief, Egg's jape made her smile. Egg's jape? I thought that was Dunk talking. Yeah, I think that's a misprint because that was Dunk's jape. Anyways, it made her smile. Whoever's joke it was. I have several that are big enough for Bennis, though. Maester Carrick says Wolmer's face was sliced open almost to the bone. Sir Bennis lost his temper with the man, my lady. Sir Eustace sent me here to pay the blood price. The blood price? She laughed. He is an old man, I know, but I had not realized he was so old as that. Does he think we are living in the age of heroes, when a man's life was reckoned to be worth no more than a sack of silver? The digger was not killed, my lady, Dunk reminded him. No one was killed that I saw. His face was cut, is all. Her fingers danced idly along her braid. How much does Sir Eustace reckon Wolmer's cheek to be worth, pray? 1 silver stag, and 3 for you, my lady. Sir Eustace said it sets a niggard's price upon my honor, though 3 silvers are better than 3 chickens, I grant you. He would do better to deliver Bennis up to me for chastisement. Would this involve that sack you mentioned? It might. She coiled her braid around one hand. Osgray can keep his silver. Only blood can pay for blood. Well, said Dunk, it may be as you say, my lady, but why not send for that man that Bennis cut and ask him if he'd sooner have a silver stag or Bennis in a sack? Oh, he'd pick the silver if he couldn't have both. I don't doubt that, sir. It's not his choice to make. This is about the lion and the spider now, not some peasant's cheek. It is Bennis I want, and Bennis I shall have. No one rides on to my lands, does harm to one of mine, and escapes to laugh about it. Your ladyship rode on to Standfast land and did harm to one of Sir Eustace's, Dunk said, before he stopped to think about it. Did I? She tugged her braid again. If you mean the sheep stealer, the man was notorious. I had twice complained to Osgray, yet he did nothing. I did not ask thrice. The king's laws grant me the power of pit and gallows. It was Egg who answered her. On your own lands, the boy insisted. The king's law gives lords the power of pit and gallows on their own lands. Clever boy, she said. If you know that much, you will also know that landed knights have no right to punish without their liege lord's leave. Sir Eustace holds standfast of Lord Rohan. Bennis broke the king's peace when he drew blood and must answer for it. She looked to Dunk. If Sir Eustace will deliver Bennis to me, I'll slit his nose, and that will be the end of it. If I must come and take him, I make no such promise. Dunk had a sudden sick feeling in the pit of his stomach. I will tell him, But he won't give up Sir Bennis. He hesitated. The dam was the cause of all the trouble. If your ladyship would consent to take it down. Impossible, declared the young... Oh, sorry. Impossible! I need my maester voice. Declared the young maester by Lady Rohan's side. Coldmoat supports 20 times as many small folk as does Standfast. Her ladyship has fields of wheat and corn and barley, all dying from the drought. She has 6 orchards, apples, and apricots of 3 kinds of pears. She has cows about to calf, 500 head of black-nosed sheep. She breeds the finest horses in the reach. We have 12 mares about to foal. Sir Eustace has sheep too, Dunk said. He has melons in the fields, beans and barley corn, and... You were taking water for the moat, Egg said loudly. I was getting to the moat, Dunk thought. The moat is essential to Coldmoat's defenses, the maester insisted. Do you suggest that Lady Rohan leave herself open to attack in such uncertain times as these? Well, Dunk said slowly, a dry moat is still a moat, and Milady has strong walls with ample men to defend them. Sir Duncan, Lady Rohan said, when I was 10 years old when the black dragon rose. I begged my father not to put himself at risk, or at least to leave my husband. Who would protect me if both my men were gone? So he took me up on the ramparts and pointed out Coldmoat's strong points. Keep them strong, he said, and they will keep you safe. If you see to your defenses, no men will do you any harm. The first thing he pointed out was the moat. She stroked her cheek with the tail of her braid. My first husband perished on the red grass field. My father found me others. But the stranger took them too. I no longer trust in men, no matter how ample they may seem. I trust in stone and steel and water. I trust in moats, sir, and mine will not go dry. Her moat is not dry, folks. What your father said, that's well and good, said Dunk, but it doesn't give you the right to take Osgray water. She tugged her braid. I suppose Sir Eustace told you the stream was his. For 1,000 years, said Dunk, it's named the Checky Water. That's plain. So it is. She tugged again, once, twice, thrice. As the river is called the Mander, though, the Manderleys were driven from its banks 1,000 years ago. Highgarden is still Highgarden, though the last gardener died on the field of fire. Casterly Rock teems with Lannisters, and nowhere Casterly to be found. The world changes, sir. This Checky Water rises in the Horseshoe Hills, which were wholly mine when last I looked. The water is mine as well. Maester's Carrick, show him. What? What is this? Like West Virginia? Sorry, we got monkey business afoot out front. Let's see. The maester descended from the dais. He could not have been much older than Dunk, but in his gray robes and chain collar, he had an air of somber wisdom that belied his years. In his hands was an old parchment. See for yourself, sir, he said as he unrolled it and offered it to Dunk. Dunk the lunk, thick as a castle wall. He felt his cheeks reddening again. Gingerly, he took parchment from the maester and scowled at the writing. Not a word of it was intelligible to him, but he knew the wax seal beneath the ornate signature, the 3-headed dragon of House Targaryen, the king's seal. He was looking at a royal decree of some sort. Dunk moved his head from side to side so they would think that he was reading. That's pretty... I love that. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm totally reading this. There's a word here I can't make out, he muttered after a moment. Egg, come have a look. You have sharper eyes than me. The boy darted to his side. Which word, sir? Dunk pointed. That one? Oh. Egg read quickly, then raised his eyes to Dunk's and gave a little nod. It is her stream. She has a paper. Dunk felt as though he'd been punched in the stomach. The king's own seal. There must be some mistake. The old man's sons died in service to the king. Why would his grace take the stream away? If King Darren had been a less forgiving man, he should have lost his head as well. For half a heartbeat, Dunk was lost. What do you mean? She means, said Maester Carrick, that Sir Eustace Osgray is a rebel and a traitor. Sir Eustace chose the Black Dragon over the Red in hopes that a Blackfire king might restore the lands and castles that the Osgrays had lost under the Targaryens. Lady Rohan said, chiefly he wanted Coldmoat. His sons paid for his treason with their life's blood. When he bought their bones home and delivered his daughter to the king's men for a hostage, his wife threw herself from the top of Standfast Tower. Did Sir Eustace tell you that? Her smile was sad. No, I did not think so. The Black Dragon. You swore your sword to a traitor, Lunk. You ate a traitor's bread and slept beneath a rebel's roof. Milady, he said, groping, the black dragon, that was 15 years ago. This is now, and there's a drought. Even if he was a rebel once, so Eustace still needs water. The Red Widow rose and smoothed her skirts. He had best pray for rain, then. That was when Dunk recalled Osgrey's parting words in the wood. If you will not grant him a share of the water for his own sake, do it for his son. His son? Adam. He served here as your father's page and squire. Lady Rohan's face was stone. Come closer. He did not know what else to do but to obey. The dais added a good foot to her height, yet even so Dunk towered over her. Kneel, she said. He did. The slap she gave him had all her strength behind it, and she was stronger than she looked. His cheek burned, and he could taste blood in his mouth from a broken lip, but she hadn't truly hurt him. For a moment, all Dunk could think of was grabbing her by that long red braid and pulling her across his lap to slap her arse, like you would a spoiled child. If I do, she'll scream, though, and 20 knights will come bursting in to kill me. Dude, this is so fucking kinky right here, dude. You dare appeal to me in Adam's name? Her nostrils flare. Remove yourself from Coldmoat, sir, at once. I never meant... Go, or I will find a sack large enough for you if I have to sew one up myself. Tell Sir Eustace to bring me Bennis of the Brown Shield by the morrow, else I will come for him myself with fire and sword. Do you understand me? Fire and sword! So there you go. There you go. I see the chats. I hope you guys are getting hot down there, man. This is dude. this is some of the best. I mean, there's like Asha and Carl the Maid. There's like Sam and Gilly. There's not a lot of pure like love affairs that you can really. I mean, Jamie and Cersei is all twisted, and everyone's all twisted in this story. But this is pure sexual tension and romance here. So definitely one of the reasons why Rohan is a great character. And as the story goes on, you see that essentially what's happening with her is, oh, actually, no, there's a quote. I don't want to take her words out of her mouth. There's a quote about this. Essentially, she's got to play it tough because there are suitors stalking her lands. And she is, oh, it's right. They're talking about a pissing match. That was the quote. So, I cannot return to Coldmoat empty-handed. They will say the Red Widow has lost her bite, that she was too weak to do justice, that she could not protect her small folk. You do not understand, sir. I might, better than you know. I remember once some little lord in the Stormlands took Sir Arlen into his service to help him fight over some other little lord. When I asked the old man what they were fighting over, he said, "Nothing, lad, it's just some pissing contest." Lady Rohan gave him a shocked look, but could sustain it no more than half a heartbeat before it turned into a grin. I have heard 1,000 empty courtesies in my time, but you are the first knight who has ever said pissing in my presence. Her freckled face went somber. Those pissing contests are how lords judge one another's strength, and woe to any man who shows his weakness. A woman must needs piss twice as hard if she hopes to rule. And if that woman should happen to be small, Lord Stackhouse covets my horseshoe hills, Sir Clifford Conklin has an old claim to Leafy Lake, those dismal Durwells live by stealing cattle, and beneath mine own roof I have the Long Inch. Every day I wake wondering if this might be the day he marries me by force. Her hand curled tight around her braid, as hard as if it were a rope, as if she were dangling over some precipice. He wants to, I know. He holds back for fear of my wrath, just as Conklin and Stackhouse and the Durwells tread carefully where the Red Widow is concerned, if any of them thought for a moment that I had turned weak and soft. So, that's essentially why the Red Widow has to maintain this sort of presence. Let me put me back here front and center. Has to, she's got to be tough. And you see this with Cersei as well. Cersei is a less good reaction to that same dynamic. She is basically trying to be, tough as she can be in order to, and that's like true in modern politics. Like if you observe women that run in politics, a lot of times they're more hawkish. It's the Margaret Thatcher syndrome, I think it's called. It's like if you want to, get power in a man's world, then you have to be even more warlike and tough than the men, just to overcome that perceived weakness. And it's obviously one of the crappy things about patriarchy. It's not really specifically subtle or mysterious, and so you can see that replicated right in here with Lady Rohan. And so before we ever meet her, there are several quotes which make her seem scary, and that's actually what's so great about this whole scene, is that you meet her and she's obviously very sweet and charming, and her and Dunk have all this steamy action going on. But before they meet her, she sounds like an absolute monster. So here are the quotes that we get about the Red Widow before Dunk actually goes there. It says, Dunk wanted no trouble with the Lady of Coldmoat. At Standfast, you heard ill things of her. The Red Widow, she was called, for the husband she had put into the ground. Old Sam Stoops said she was a witch and a poisoner and worse. 2 years ago, she had sent her knights across the stream to seize an Osgray man for stealing sheep. When my lord rode to Coldmoat to demand him back, he was told to look for him at the bottom of the moat, Sam had said. She'd sewn poor Dake in a bag of rocks and sunk him. 'Twas after that Sir Eustace took Sir Bennis into service to keep them spiders off his lands. Next quote, it says, the woman had a spider's heart. She murdered 3 of her husbands, and all her brothers died in swaddling clothes. 5 there were, or 6 maybe, I don't recall. They stood between her and the castle. She would whip the skin off any peasant who displeased her, I do not doubt. But for you to cut one, no, she will not suffer such an insult. Make no mistake, she will come for you as she came for them. And then there's another quote, Dunk and Egg talking to each other. Just how many husbands has she had, do you know? 4, said Egg, but no children. Whenever she gives birth, a demon comes by night to carry off the issue. Sam Stoops' wife says she sold her babies unborn to the Lord of the Seven Hills, so he'd teach her his black arts. Highborn ladies don't meddle with black arts. They dance and sing and do embroidery. Maybe she dances with demons and embroiders evil spells, Egg said with relish. And Egg goes on to compare her to Shiera Seastar, Bloodraven's paramour, who was said to bathe in blood. So there's like a running trope in A Song of Ice and Fire, of course, of people believing that women are witches and sorceresses if there's anything unusual about them, or if they're foreign, or anything like that. We've seen it all through Fire and Blood, as well as the main series. There's a ton of it in the backstory. So this is yet another instance. The fun thing is that there are some witches, though. Like there are witches in A Song of Ice and Fire. So there's a little bit of a question. Like Lady Rohan doesn't seem to be a witchcraft practitioner. However, the odd deaths continue in her story after this one. We're going to get to this, but she eventually marries Gerald Lannister, who was mentioned in that list of suitors, right? There was a couple of suitors, and then the Septon was talking about letters that Gerald Lannister had sent, and Lady Rohan's like, oh yes, I liked those letters, but he probably won't come here because I'm too insignificant and he has more power in Lannisport, yada, yada, yada. Well, turns out that after the story's over, a few years later, they did marry. And Lady Rohan and Gerald Lannister went from being the Lord of Lannister's brother to the Lord of Lannister because his brother died, and then his brother's daughter died a year later. So there's like all these mysterious deaths that put Gerald the Golden into the high seat of the Lannisters. And so you can speculate that maybe Rohan Webber was, knocking off his enemies so they could be together or whatever. But we don't. We'll get to the Gerald the Golden Lannister part of this. I want to go through the. Does she weigh as much as a duck? That's the real question, Carl Karsenak. We could obviously tell if she was a witch by doing that. But let me. We're 45 minutes in here, and I've mostly been reading quotes. One of the reasons why I chose to do a little longer quote reading is because I figured some of you guys probably haven't read Dunk and Egg. You should. You all need to read Dunk and Egg, but I figured some of you hadn't and you'd still tune into the stream. So I figured we'd start off with a nice long quote that gives a context to the story and stuff like that. And let's go ahead and just summarize the story. So essentially we've got this setup here with Osgray at Standfast Castle, which is really just a tower. And then we've got Coldmoat, ruled by Rohanne Webber, although she's in this weird position because of the will. She's got to marry somebody by the end of the next new moon, or else she'll have to marry Longinch, who's obviously, he's ugly and mean and he's like 55. So I mean, it's like absolutely is unlikable as it possibly could be. I'm sorry. I wanted to forgive my ADD. I wanted to say real quick, PayPal.me mythical astronomy. This is how you send me Christmas presents. By the way, thank you everyone. Sent me a lot of PayPals on our Christmas stream. I really appreciate that. If you missed that, this was basically the Jon Snow live discussion follow-up. I talked about how the others will steal Jon's body, how that will work, the foreshadowing that Jon will actually lead the others against Winterfell as a new Night King. So check that out. That one's called Jon of the Crypts, or How the Others Will Steal Jon's Body. I don't know. It's on my page. But thank you all. If you want to, like I said, send in donations, you can do that with a paypal.me link, and you can send a question with that. Hey, Quinn.
Hey, guys.
Yes.
How's it going?
Quinn of House Atreides is my roommate. When's Dune coming out, dude?
Oh, people are asking me. Oh, you mean my chapter I was doing?
No, I mean the Dune movie.
Oh, I don't fucking know. October 1st, apparently. Who knows?
But I was trying to do the, like, everyone's asking you when the Dune movie's coming out, so I'll ask you too thing. Quinn's Ideas is the name of Quinn's YouTube channel. For those of you who may not know, Quinn's Ideas, you can find awesome science fiction and fantasy coverage of all different stripes, including Dune and now Star Wars. Quinn sighting, yes, the obligatory one. Thanks, Carl Karsenak. Here's the link to the live stream that we did on Christmas night a couple days ago. In any case, thank you, everyone who sent me money. I appreciate that. And you can also do a super chat if you want to do a smaller donation. Super chat's a fun way to do it. YouTube does take a little slice of it. That's okay. It's a fun way to do it. Your question gets lit up on the comments there, and I can see it. So either way is a good way to send me a question and support the program. But that said, let us summarize the story. So we've got this set up with these two castles. Like I said, you've got the small Standfast Tower with old Eustace Osgrey, and Dunk is in service to him. And this other knight named Brown Bennis, who's an absolute scumbag. I think he burned the woods, by the way, but we'll get to that. And then, of course, across the stream is Coldmoat and Lady Rohan. Now, they alluded to it in the passage, but just to make sure you guys catch it, it used to all be Osgrey land. Coldmoat, Standfast, those hills, and all those places that they talked about used to all belong to House Osgrey. Osgrey is an old house. It goes way back centuries and centuries, and old man Eustace is fond of talking about it. But the point is, it all used to belong to House Osgrey. That's why when they go over to Coldmoat, there was that line about behind the spider banners, you could see the old stone lion's head, because it used to belong to Osgrey, and Osgrey's sigil is the Checky lion. It's a green and yellow checkerboard lion. That's the sigil. So what happened was Eustace Osgrey picked the Black Dragon, as you heard. He backed the Blackfires. The Blackfires lost, and so he lost most of his lands and was only allowed to keep that tower, basically a tower to die in, just like they were trying to give Barristan Selmy when they were trying to force his retirement. I have the itchiest face today. I am so sorry. I know it's not fun to watch people scratch their faces on live streams. In any case, but don't worry, I never go out in public at all. I'm the most socially isolated, distanced, and COVID-safe person in the world, so don't worry about me touching my face. I'm okay. I wash my hands like 50,000 times a day, and I never leave the house. So thank you, Tracy. So the setup is, there is a dam, as you can see. Lady Rohan dammed up the stream, and the waters, she's irrigating her fields with it. And now the Osgrey has no water. And so Osgrey has sent Dunk over to treat with them. There was a scuffle before. So at the beginning of the story, it starts off with, Dunk and Egg bringing wine back to Standfast. It's very hot. They talk about there's been a drought. The land is dry and parched. Everything is dry. And they notice that the stream is now dry when it was flowing a few days ago. And they follow the stream, and they find this dam. And Bennis of the Brown Shield, who again is a scumbag, he was trying to get Dunk not to go look at the dam. He already knew the dam was there, and he's like, Dunk, don't go look at the stream dried up. Don't ask questions, man. We have a good life here. Don't go turning over rocks, Dunk. And then Dunk does, because Dunk always turns over rocks. And so then, essentially, Bennis and Dunk came to the dam, and they find score of diggers, peasants of Coldmoat, basically digging the land around the dam. They just made the dam. They're working around it. And Bennis decides to teach a lesson to one of them. So he starts talking smack, and he ends up cutting one of the digger's face across the face with the sword. That's the blood debt that's caused here. And Dunk sort of tamped the situation down. He's like, put your sword away. You guys run back to the castle and tell them we need to talk about this dam. And then they go back to stand fast. So now Eustace, when he hears about this, Lord Eustace Osgrey, he realizes they have trouble now. He's like, oh, you cut one of her workers. That's ill done. Now she's going to want to do something about it. But I can't go over there because I swore I'd never go over there because we have an old feud. So that's why Dunk ends up going over to Coldmoat in the quote that we read at the beginning. So then you saw the interaction was going well until Dunk, mentioned the name of Eustace's son, Adam. Again, Eustace set up Dunk and didn't give him all the information. Eustace said that his son, Adam, served as a page at Coldmoat and that he and Rohan became fond with each other. Well, they became more fond with each other. It was like Rohan's first love. And Rohan never forgave Eustace for sending his son Adam off to war at such a young age, at like 12, and he died. And so Rohan has had a grudge against him ever since then, essentially. Oh, happy holidays from Deb. Thank you, Deb. Happy holidays to you too. Hope everyone had a good Christmas as well as can be had. So then, Eustace is a bit of a coward. There's no doubt about that. So then what happens then? So Rohan sends him back, and she says, I will come with fire and sword, if you don't give me Brown Bennis. So then what happens is they start training the peasants to fight because, of course, Eustace is stubborn. He won't give up Brown Bennis. Brown Bennis is a coward. He won't go and take the heat. And so they call the 8 meager there's actually a dozen peasants that come to the summons, but basically Eustace Osgrey has a few peasants under him. And so they end up with 8 peasants that they're training to fight. And it's pathetic. They can't fight. They fall apart as soon as anyone charges them. And it's like a training montage, and it's obviously hopeless. And so in the end, what happens is that somebody sets the woods on fire the night before there's going to be a confrontation. And so everyone wakes up in the middle of the night and they can see Watt's wood on fire. And so then the next morning, everyone shows up at the stream. And essentially, Rohan is there again, demanding Brown Bennis. And not only does Eustace refuse to give over Brown Bennis, he accuses Rohan of burning the woods, which he thinks of as his. And she says, no, I didn't burn the woods. And that is a vile accusation, and I demand a trial. And so essentially what they work out there is it ends up with a trial by combat between Dunk, representing Eustace, and the Long Inch, representing Rohan. And so Rohan is essentially skillfully maneuvered the situation. What she wants is to be free of the Long Inch. And so she has made it so that the Long Inch has to represent her as his champion, as her champion, but she thinks that Dunk is going to win, which of course Dunk does. It's a very exciting fight in the stream. Dunk is losing, but then manages to sort of just drag the guy down into the water, brawler style, which is how Dunk always wins his fights. And he stabs him underwater, and the guy dies. And Dunk is majorly messed up. He's got broken bones and bruises and all sorts of things. He wakes up in Coldmoat Castle with Lady Rohan tending to him, and that is where they have their last scene. Or no, not Lady Rohan tending to him. He wakes up in the castle, And actually, the Septon is tending to him. And Rohan, he doesn't see anything of Rohan for a couple weeks until he leaves. And then when he leaves, she tries to give him a horse, but instead he cuts off a chunk of her braid and takes that as a souvenir, and they leave. And what happens is Rohan Webber marries Eustace Osgray, because what this does is it unites the lands. And then she essentially, because she has to marry someone, and so she does. She marries Eustace. Eustace doesn't live very long, but that fulfills the will and gets her off the hook. Eustace gets to be Lord of Coldmoat again, which makes him happy. And there's a nice scene where we hear about Rohan and Eustace finally talking about Adam, you know, the person that they both loved and haven't had a chance to mourn together over. They go down to the blackberry patch where Adam is buried, and they talk, and then they marry. And so this marriage basically gets Rohan out of her jam. And Dunk and Rohan have a steamy kiss. So we're going to read that scene. We're going to read the scene. I just wanted to flesh out the rest of the story summary before we do any more quote readings, because it was a very long quote. Yes. So let's do the joke. Writer of Rohan. Yes. Well, so there's a better joke here. So of course, the horsemen in Lord of the Rings are the riders of Rohan, Rohan. But did you catch the line that Rohan Webber breeds the finest horses in the Reach? So they are the riders of Rohan. It's literally right there. So yes, total Lord of the Rings nod. I don't think it means anything more than that, but it's a very cool Lord of the Rings hat tip there. So. So that's essentially the story. So Rohanne Webber, she's a cool character because she's built up as this monster. And then you meet her and it's like, oh, she's a cute girl. But actually she's pretty tough. And then, she's both charming and tough. So she's running this gamut between these two personality poles. And she's obviously, turning Dunk for a loop and got him all tongue-tied and stuff. And then it's a version of the sort of the damsel in the tower, locked up against her father's will, trapped, made to marry against her father's will. It's kind of a version of that, except for the father's dead and Rohan's not without agency, but she is essentially trapped in the castle there with a giant guarding her, if you will, Lucas Longinch as the giant, just as Val has a giant guarding her up in the tower. And just like, Lyanna has a Kingsguard outside of her tower. So that's kind of the setup here. And she skillfully, basically maneuvers the situation. She uses Dunk as a way to get rid of Longinch and uses a marriage to Eustace as a way to get rid of the will, and ends up a free woman, lord of a bunch of lands, who has elevated her status. And then, like I said, she marries Gerald the Golden Lannister at some point in the next 8 years. So Dunk and Egg, this is all taking place at 211 AC. And the first child of Gerald Lannister and Rohanne Webber is born in 220. So she must have married Gerald Lannister at the latest by about 218, which means she was only married to Sir Eustace for a few years, if at all. But after Eustace died, she, like I said, was obviously in a position to where she was powerful enough to marry Sir Gerald Lannister. Now, Rohan is referred to as Sir Gerald Lannister's, quote, beloved second wife. So it's implied that they married for love. It's a little bit of a marrying down kind of a thing. Gerald Lannister I guess she would actually be Lady of Osgray at that point, because she married Osgray. They united the lands again under the Osgray name. So she would have been Lady Rohanne Osgray, but still not nearly, it's kind of like Robb marrying a Westerling. It's like, okay, there's, several rungs down the ladder here. So that does indicate that it was a marriage for love. But like I said, the suspicious thing is that when Gerald the Golden comes to power, there's two deaths that get the suspicious circumstances description in the World of Ice and Fire that George always hangs on stuff that he wants us to look harder at. So then Rohan essentially marries Gerald Lannister after he rises to power. Again, his brother dies, then his brother's daughter dies, Gerald's niece, and then he comes to power. They get married. Rohan has 4 kids with Gerald Lannister, one of which is Tytos, Tywin's son. So Rohanne Webber, Osgrey Lannister, is the grandmother of Tywin, and thus the great-grandmother of Jaime, Cersei, and Tyrion. So that's pretty cool. Not only is Dunk, related to Hodor and Brienne and who knows who else, we've got Lady Rohan related to all the Lannisters. Karsnark is mentioning that I'm writing a book. I am writing a book. It's about mythology and symbolism and the Garden of Eden and all kinds of cool stuff. You can check it out by looking for Paradise Gained on Indiegogo, or you can follow the link, which is also in the description. Right now, all I'm asking for is people to sign the mailing list. And yes, here's where you can become a patron. Thank you, Carl Karsnark. Did I missay something? I don't know. Tytos is Tywin's father. Yeah, so Lady Rohan, one of her Gerald and Rohan, one of their children was Tytos. Tytos gave birth to Tywin. Tywin gave birth to Lannister kids. So I don't know if I said that wrong the first time, but Lady Rohan is the great-grandmother of the Lannisters in the story. That's the point. Now, the last part of the story is that Lady Rohan disappears mysteriously in 230 AC. So after being married for 12 or so years, at least, to Gerald and giving him 4 kids, right after the birth of her 4th kid, she, quote, disappears under mysterious circumstances. And then we never hear anything else about her. And that's it. And I spent an hour or 2 last night reading all the theories on Reddit and Westeros, trying to figure out if anybody has figured out anything about Lady Rohan, and nobody really has. There's really nothing to go on. But I will say this. It looks likely that it's going to be the subject of a future Dunk and Egg story, which makes you think that Dunk might be involved in the disappearance. 230 AC is when Rohan disappears. 3 years later is the Great Council where Egg is made Aegon and is named king. And so Gerald the Golden Lannister plays a large role in making that happen. And one of his sons, Tion, one of Rohan's sons, Tion, ends up being Egg's squire when Egg gets older. So there's this connection between Egg and his kingship and Gerald Lannister and Rohan's son, Tion. So it kind of makes you think that there's some sort of loose connection there. And it's likely that Gerald Lannister probably got told the whole story of Dunk that we hear in the Sworn Sword, because this is like, it's known history, first of all, and it's the most important part of Rohan's history. It's like how she got freed of her previous marriage, or how she got freed of the will, and then how she got into her marriage with Eustace. So you can sort of see that, the fact that Gerald Lannister worked so hard to help Egg gain the throne, and the fact that his son was taken as Egg's squire, that shows you that Dunk and Egg may have maintained a connection to Rohan and the Lannisters, or it could simply be that the favor that Rohan still had for Dunk and Egg enabled them to make a connection later. But there is potential to get a future Dunk and Egg story. And of course, George says he wants to do 7 Dunk and Egg stories that are going to lead up to Summerhall. George has said that he's going to do 4 more. So perhaps in a future Dunk and Egg story, we will get the answer. It's an obvious mystery that he's created Rohan disappearing mysteriously, and then he's given us no clues. So one thinks that we'll find out more about that in the future. Some people thought maybe she's the ghost of Highheart, but that seems unlikely. The ghost of Highheart is like way shorter than 5 feet tall, and she has the burning red eyes. She really seems more like a child of the forest. So I don't think that's it. I don't think Rohan is Old Nan either. I've seen that theory, but that doesn't make sense. Old Nan is a different romance of Dunk. Dunk is going to have a romance in like every story, I think. Is Tanzel too tall? He's thinking about, and he's thinking about Rohan. I think Dunk's going to have like a lot of loves because Dunk is low key suave. That's the thing. Is like, I think he's really good looking, but doesn't realize it. And he's so innocent and like, foolish that he ends up charming people. And you can tell the ladies love Dunk, dude. And so I think this idea that Dunk has left many Dunklings, many seeds around the Seven Kingdoms is right. And obviously George has said that Brienne is descended from Dunk. Hodor almost certainly is. So I think that, Dunk the hunk, exactly. I think that Dunk essentially, Old Nan is a different, person that Dunk had a romance with in Winterfell. So it's too old. Like Rohan would have to be, I don't think it, because she's 25 in 211. So Old Nan really is like, Rohan would be too old to be Old Nan. Yeah, that's the thing. So, there's also a question of potentially there's people with grudges against Rohan. Okay, so if you see at all these people dying, like she had a bunch of brothers that died, her husbands died, then the people in Gerald's way died. And then so they become the power couple. So if she was doing any witchcraft, then perhaps the price came due. Some people have speculated, whatever, because you know how it is. George likes to follow the rules of fairy tales with magic. And when you make a deal with the devil, when you gain magic power, like there's always a price to pay. So if she was working any magic to sort of charm her life, if you will, maybe that came back to roost somehow. Maybe one of her enemies. There's a whole Tarbeck and Rain feud with the Lannisters that starts during this time of Gerald the Golden and Rohan and ends with Tywin and the Rains of Castamere and him erasing the lines of Tarbeck and Rain. And so it's possible that Ellen Rain, I think, is one of the main plotters, that she had something to do with Rohan's disappearance. I've seen that speculated as well. But the bottom line is that we don't know, and it's clearly, we don't know because George is going to tell us in the future and doesn't want to give us too much information. So and let's see here. Yeah, I don't know about all that House Strong stuff, but I know that Brienne is definitely a Dunkling, and Hodor surely too. So Rohan disappearing is giving me Bloodraven vibes. Yeah, there perhaps. Yeah, I mean, there could be a magical explanation. Like I said, it's an open question as to whether or not there's any truth to the rumors of witchery and sorcery around Rohan. It's just, we don't get any direct evidence of it, but except for just, like I said, all the coincidences, if you will. So one thing about Our Lady Rohan here, before I get into the mythical astronomy symbolism, is that she seems to be a little bit of an Artemis figure, especially when we meet her in the hunting greens with the bow. So Artemis was the Greek goddess of hunting, wild nature, and chastity. The daughter of Zeus and the sister of Apollo, Artemis was regarded as a patron of girls and young women and as a protectress during childbirth. She was worshipped across the Greek world, where the most famous cult was at Ephesus. Let's see here. And I don't know if there's a ton to go into with this, but there are, when we get into her, some of the dream visions of her and the mythical symbolism, I think this sort of plays off of that. She was given a silver bow by Cyclops and a pack of hunting dogs from Pan. So Artemis is a moon goddess. That's the main thing, is that she's a moon goddess and she's a goddess of the hunt. And Rohan is obviously a huntress figure. And the moon goddess is the important thing because Rohan is a very important Nissa Nissa Weirwood goddess figure. So that moon goddess association is important. And yes, George is red hair obsessed. Ravenous Reader and a couple others have speculated that surely George has like a lost love that he lost, you know, a redhead that he lost in some sort of love triangle, because there are so many love triangles where one guy steals the girl from the other. And you got to think it was one of those handsome quarterback types, because all the quarterback types like Theon and Robb Stark and Rhaegar, like they all get that it doesn't work out well for them. But in any case, here. Okay, so where do I want to go next with this? Let's see, what else do I want to say about her character before we get into the mythical symbolism? That's the question I need to ask about myself. So she's a fun character. Well, let's do this. Let's read the last quote, where the last scene between them. How about that? Here we go. Kindle's lagging so bad. Sorry, guys. Okay, so Dunk wakes up, and he basically spent 2 weeks recovering at Coldmoat after his duel with Longinch. So he got pretty messed up. But then he finally gets tired of laying in bed, and he's getting up and he's limping out, and the Septon's doing the whole thing. He's like, "Oh, you can't leave yet? You're still hurt." He's like, "Nope, I gotta go. I'm a tough guy. I'm a knight. Bloody, bloody, bloody." And he says, "I hope this is not some mad quest to hunt down Bennis." Septon said, "You are so bruised and battered, I would fear for you if that one found you in such a state." Bennis, Dunk thought bitterly, bloody Bennis. While Dunk had been making his stand at the stream, Bennis had tied up Sam Stoops and his wife, ransacked Standfast from top to bottom, and made off with every item of value he could find, from candles, clothes, and weaponry to Osgrey's old silver cup and a small cache of coins the old man had hidden in his solar behind a mildewed tapestry. One day Dunk hoped to meet Sir Bennis of the Brown Shield again, and when he did, Bennis will keep. Where will you go? The Septon was panting heavily. Even with Dunk on a crutch, he was too fat to match his pace. Fair Isle, Harrenhal, the Trident, there are hedges everywhere. He shrugged. I've always wanted to see the wall. The wall? The Septon jerked to a stop. I despair of you, Sir Duncan, he shouted, standing in the mud with his outspread hands as the rain came down around him. Pray, sir, pray for the crone to light your way. Dunk kept walking. So Dunk is doing the mad walk right here, and says, she was waiting for him inside the stables, standing by the yellow bales of hay in a gown as green as summer. Sir Duncan, she said, when he came pushing through the door. Her red braid hung down in front, the end of it brushing against her thighs. It is good to see you on your feet. You never saw me on my back, he thought. Milady, what brings you to the stables? It's a wet day for a ride. I might say the same to you. Egg told you? I owe him another clout in the ear. Be glad he did, or I would have sent men after you to drag you back. It was cruel of you to try to steal away without so much as a farewell. She had never come to see him while he was in Maester Carrick's care, not once. That green becomes you well, milady, he said. It brings out the color of your eyes. He shifted his weight awkwardly on the crutch. I'm here for my horse. You do not need to go. There is a place for you here when you're recovered. Captain of my guards, and Egg can join my other squires. No one need ever know who he is. Thank you, milady, but no. Thunder was in a stall a dozen places down. Dunk hobbled toward him. Please reconsider, sir. These are perilous times, even for dragons and their friends. Stay until you've healed. She walked along beside him. It would please Lord Eustace, too. He is very fond of you. And by the way, I'm getting the Grail Castle. So Monty Python and the Holy Grail, remember Galahad? He goes to the Castle Anthrax, and it's all the women. We are but 80 young blondes and brunettes between the ages of 19 and 24 and a half, or whatever it is. And they're all like, please stay a bit longer. She's totally doing that. She's like, stay longer, please reconsider. Anyways. And then she said, Eustace, it would please Lord Eustace too. He is very fond of you. Very fond, Dunk agreed. If his daughter wasn't dead, he'd want me to marry her. Then you could be my lady mother. I never had a mother, much less a lady mother. For half a heartbeat, Lady Rohan looked as though she was going to slap him again. Maybe she'll just kick my crutch away. You are angry with me, sir, she said instead. You must let me make amends. Well, he said, you could help me saddle Thunder. Dunk the lunk. Help me with my horse. I had something else in mind. She reached out her hand for his, a freckled hand, her fingers strong and slender. I'll bet she's freckled all over. How well do you know horses? I ride one. An old destrier bred for battle, slow-footed and ill-tempered. Not a horse to ride from... Oh, I'm sorry. I had the voices backwards. How well do you know horses? I ride one. An old destrier bred for battle, slow-footed and ill-tempered. Not a horse to ride from place to place. If I need to get from place to place, it's him or these. Dunk pointed at his feet. You have large feet, she observed. Large hands as well. I think you must be large all over. Too large for most palfreys. They'd look like ponies with you perched upon their backs. Still, a swifter mount would serve you well. A big courser with some Dornish sandsteed for endurance. She pointed to the stall across from Thunder's. A horse like that. She was a blood bay with a bright eye and a long, fiery mane. Lady Rohan took a carrot from her sleeve and stroked her head as she took it. The carrot, not the fingers, she told the horse before she turned again to Dunk. I call her Flame, but you may name her as you please. Call her Amends if you like. For a moment, he was speechless. He leaned on the crutch and looked at the blood bay with new eyes. She was magnificent, a better mount than any the old man had ever owned. You only had to look at those long, clean limbs to see how swift she'd be. I bred her for beauty and for speed. He turned back to Thunder. I cannot take her. Why not? She is too good a horse for me. Just look at her. A flush crept up Rohan's face. She clutched her braid, twisting it between her fingers. If I had to marry, I had to marry, you know that. My father's will... Oh, don't be such a fool. What else should I be? I'm as thick as a castle wall and bastard born as well. Take the horse. I refuse to let you go without something to remember me by. I will remember you, my lady. Have no fear of that. Take her. Dunk grabbed her braid and pulled her face to his. It was awkward with the crutch and the difference in their heights. He almost fell before he got his lips on hers. He kissed her hard. One of her hands went round his neck and one round his chest. He learned more about kissing in a moment than he had ever known from watching. But when they finally broke apart, he drew his dagger. I know what I want to remember you by, my lady. Egg was waiting for him at the gatehouse, mounted on a handsome new sorrel palfrey and holding Maester's lead. When Dunk trotted up to them on Thunder, the boy looked surprised. She said she wanted to give you a horse, sir. Even highborn ladies don't get all they want, Dunk said, as they rode out across the drawbridge. It wasn't a horse I wanted. The moat was so high it was threatening to overflow its banks. I took something else to remember her by instead, a lock of that red hair. He reached under his cloak, brought out the braid, and smiled. So, there it is. That was the final last scene. So Dunk rides thunder and Rohan rides fire. Oh, there's some symbolism going on here. Good Lord. I guess let's start with the horse. So look. Oh man, there's just so much. So, you're in trouble when I do that. The full face rub, deep breath. Here we're going to talk about symbolism now. Routine, but that's where we're going. So the horse is called a blood bay. And its mane is flame, and it has a bright eye. So, as you know, the tree Yggdrasil, there's just so much. It's hard to know where to start. The tree Yggdrasil is what the Weirwoods are modeled after. If you know anything about Norse mythology, Yggdrasil is the mythical world tree of Odin. It spans the 9 realms of the cosmos. It represents the central axis of the galaxy, like all sacred trees. After Ragnarok, the world is repopulated because 2 people hid inside the tree and came back out. So it's like a womb, tomb, rebirth thing. Odin gets most of his magic powers through Yggdrasil. He's hung on the tree branches, very Christ-like sort of crucifixion to transcend death kind of a thing. Bloodraven is copying that by being down in the root zone of the tree, but also still hung on the branches. Odin uses Yggdrasil to traverse the 9 realms, so it's an astral projection tree. That's exactly what the Weirwoods are for Bloodraven. So the Weirwoods basically are little Yggdrasil trees. Now, the thing is that the Weirwoods are implied as a burning tree for several reasons. One, burning bush of Moses. It's kind of like that. It burns, but is not consumed because it's burning with the fire of the gods. The fire of the gods obviously is a metaphor for the power of the gods, literally what the Weirwood trees convey to the Greenseer, the power of the gods. Now, the Weirwood trees, of course, are white. They have red leaves. The red leaves look like bloody hands most of the time. That's how they're described, bloody hands. But there's one quote where Theon looks at the godswood and sees the red canopy like a blaze of flame amongst the green, which gives the bloody hands fire and blood symbolism, which makes sense because fire and blood are always grouped together anyways. So the Weirwood tree looks like a burning tree. It represents the idea of the fire of the gods. There's the Grey King myth of a lightning bolt setting a tree ablaze, and that's how the Grey King brought fire of the gods to the earth. It's another part of this thing. And then getting back to Yggdrasil. Yggdrasil is an ash tree. One of the reasons why ash trees are called ash trees is because their wood is very good to burn. You can cut down an ash tree and burn the wood right away. You don't even need to dry it out. The Yule log is supposed to be made of ash wood. And of course, the Yule log is very important because Odin is the Yule father. And the Yule mythology is related to Odin. And so the ash tree is Odin's tree. The ash tree is associated with burning because of the Yule log and because of its name. And when you burn, if you actually burn a tree, you're left with ashes. And so George Martin is having lots of fun with burning trees and ash trees and all this stuff. So the Blood Bay. Oh, final thing. Yggdrasil is also metaphorically Odin's horse. The word Yggdrasil literally translates to Odin's horse. 2 reasons. One is because in ancient day, they referred to as the gallows as a horse. It's called the horse of the hanged or the gallows horse because when you're hanged, you ride the gallows, okay? But Odin uses his gallows tree, Yggdrasil, to ride throughout the cosmos. And so it's a shamanic horse. It's a metaphorical horse that Odin rides through the galaxy. And the reason why shamans came up with the metaphor of horses is because in old shamanic rituals in northern Russia, the Tungus people, where the word shaman comes from, it was very common all throughout Europe and Russia. The shamanic rituals would always have the drumming. And so you'd have picture like a drum circle and chanting, a kind of thing, so that the shaman can enter the trance, journey to the other world. And so that drumming was understood as the hoofbeats of an invisible horse that the shaman rides. And so that metaphor is carried over to Yggdrasil, which is like Odin's horse. So we've got a set of metaphors now that apply to the Weirwood. We've got a burning tree, we've got the idea of a horse, we've got the idea of an ash tree, all that stuff. Okay, so the Blood Bay horse, it's a fiery horse. So Yggdrasil is a tree and a horse, and it's kind of like a burning tree. So a burning horse could be a Weirwood symbol, especially when it has a bright eye, because Odin has one eye and Bloodraven has one eye. Getting that, losing one physical eye to gain the third eye sight is a big part of the Odin mythology. And that's why all the wizards in A Song of Ice and Fire always are one-eyed. 1 second, it's lozenge time. Keep them right under the desk here. By the way, if you want to see what the desk looks like, follow me on Instagram at the Dragon, or I'm Lucifer Means Lightbringer on Instagram. And I took a picture of the backside of the desk and the whole little cozy nook that I operate in. So if you want to see the behind the scenes, that's on Instagram. Thank you, Morley. Happy holidays. So the Blood Bay, the horse. The thing is, a bay is also like water, right? Like a bay, like a, an inlet bay, right? So think of a bay of blood that's on fire, right? And then there's an eye, there's a bright eye in the middle. Well, this is just talking about God's eye stuff, because the God's eye is tied to all the Weirwood stuff in many ways. The lake in the middle. So the lake is the shape of an eye. You got a big lake, an island in the middle. So the island's the pupil, the lake is the eye, and it's called the God's eye. On the island are the Weirwoods, literally the old gods. And all of that Weirwood old god symbolism is tied back to Odin, who has one God's eye. And then Bloodraven, who's like the version of Odin in the story, he has one eye too and sees with the eyes of the gods. The trees have the eyes of the gods. So when you talk about the God's eye is always described as being on fire. There's so many scenes where the God's eye is described as being on fire because it's supposed to be this burning eye of God. And so here we have the horse. It's a blood bay with a bright eye and a flaming mane. So it's based, and then that bounces off this other quote, because Watts Wood, the forest, it gets burned. And you go into a forest of burning trees, of course, we're going to get Weirwood symbolism, and that's what we get. There are, there's literally like burning islands. Let me look it up here. Oh, you know where I can find that is on my essay. Birds, be quiet. My birds can hear me getting all excited and they want to come out and be excited. But that's not good for the stream. Weirwood Goddess, Catwoman, Nissa Nissa. By the way, if you want the Rohan Webber symbolism, I first cracked it open in the Weirwood Goddess scene. Weirwood Goddess podcast series, sorry. Series, not scene. There's lots of good Cersei stuff in there too. Oh, that's not it. It's this section above this. Cersei. Okay, so where Watts Wood had stood, they found a smoking wasteland. The fire had largely burned itself out by the time they reached the wood, but here and there a few patches were still burning. Fiery islands in a sea of ash and cinders. So it's the same symbol as a blood bay with a bright eye and a mane of flame. It's a fiery island in a sea of ash. These are all alluding to the God's eye being on fire, burning trees, which is all fire of the gods Weirwood talk. So these references are scattered all throughout this story because the entire story is about the Weirwood net. So let's back up. If that was confusing, that's because I dove in sort of at the end of the symbolism, talking about all that blood-based stuff. But let me back up and start with the Weirwood goddess theory, because that's really where all this starts. Okay, so this setup is indicative of the Weirwood net. You've got two castles on opposite sides of a stream, the stream in the middle, and the stream has a dam. As many of you know, the word weir also refers to a dam. It's called a fishing weir or even a fish garth. And what it is, it's a wooden dam-like structure that's built across a river or a stream. And the purpose is twofold. One is to catch fish, because what they do is they put like stakes, sort of a crosswork of stakes, so that the fish get caught, and then you can go and pull the fish out. And it's basically like it does the fishing for you. That's the fishing garth thing. It's also used to regulate the flow of the stream. It can be a dam, or it can simply, like I said, just hold the water up a little bit to sort of control the flow. So that's what a weir is. So this thing that they've built across the stream literally is a weir. It's a wooden weir. It's built from trees that still have the bark on them. It's noted. They cut it down. And in fact, I've got that quote right here. Half a league farther south, they came upon the dam. It was not large as such things went, but it looked strong. Two stout wooden barricades have been thrown across the stream from bank to bank, made from the trunks of trees with the bark still on. The space between them was filled with rocks and earth and packed down hard. Behind the dam, the flow was creeping up the banks and spilling off into a ditch that had been cut through Lady Webber's fields. Dunk stood in his stirrups for a better look. The glint of sun off water betrayed a score of lesser channels, running off in all directions like a spider's web. So, the sight filled him with indignation, especially when it dawned on him that the trees must surely have been taken from Wat's wood. Okay, so Wat's wood, like I said, it gets burned. So that gives us the burning tree weirwood symbolism. We see the islands of fire inside Wat's wood. And guess what? The name is a joke. What? W-A-T-T, watt. That is, of course, a measure of electricity, of energy. So Wat's wood, watt is a measure of power. So Wat's wood, it's the woods of power, the power woods, the power trees, the electric trees, the power of the gods trees, and they catch on fire. So this is all, so they pull from Wat's wood, which is just a big weirwood symbol, to make a dam, which is another weirwood symbol. And the trees still have the bark on it. So that they very much looks literally like a weir made of trees, just so we get the weir tree joke. All right. Now, the dam is the source of contention between the two sides, just as the others and the living, the forces of the living, if you will, are contending over the weirwood net. Now, I have said many times that I believe not only do the others come from the weirwoods, not only is their power rooted in the weirwoods, but actually what happened is that the weirwood net got divided. It got split in half, bifurcated. This is very important because this is the entire theme of A Song of Ice and Fire encapsulated here in the Sworn Sword, which is reconciliation. That's what all of this binary symbolism is. Sun and moon, black and white, ice and fire. It's all about division and reconciliation. And that's why at the end of the story, we should look for a reconciliation. And at the end of the Sworn Sword, that's exactly what happens. The two sides literally get married. And I didn't mention this, but it starts raining as soon as that happens. The whole land has been under this drought. Everyone is dry and starving. But as soon as Rohan and Eustace get married, it starts raining again. So this is George doing a Fisher King kind of a thing where the health of the land mimics the health of the king. And so when the leadership was divided, the land was suffering. And then when they healed the grudges, then the land is healthy again. People are healthy again. So getting back to the weirwood net, we've got these two weirwood symbols. We've got a dam made out of trees that come from a forest that's also a weirwood symbol. Now, the water that's being diverted by the weir, it's a spider web of canals. Okay, now we say weirwood net because it's a very logical analogy, right? It's kind of like the internet, and it's a network, literally like a network of trees and knowledge and people. But here we see a network like a web. Okay, so obviously Rohan is from House Webber. So the symbol that we have to talk about now is that of the spider's web. The spider web symbol is applied to the weirwood net in a few ways. When we go into the tunnels of Bloodraven's cave, we see that the roots, the root fibers, the white roots look like spider web filaments. So directly, Martin is telling us that the weirwood roots are like spider webs. Then if you look at the sigil of House Webber, which, let me see, I can pull that up real quick. Share screen. There we go. The sigil is a red spider spotted with white. On the white, on a silver web on a field of black. And I believe this is a weirwood symbol because what we have is a red and white thing and then the black darkness with a silver web. So the roots are like the web and the web is underground in the darkness. Up above, we find the red and white tree. And not only that, but it's a white tree it's bleeding, right? So this is a spotted spider. It's got white spots on red. But Rohanne Webber is the opposite. She's got pale skin with red freckles. Now, at one point, Dunk cuts his own cheek to try to make up for Bennis's wounding of the peasant. And the blood splashes Rohan, and it says, oh, that gave her more freckles. So Rohan's freckles are like blood. And of course, the Weirwood's red is like blood. So essentially, we've got a Weirwood symbol here, both in Rohan and the sigil. And then you see, again, when Rohan diverts the water into her fields with the Weir dam, it looks like a network, like a spider's web. So that's just basically telling you Rohanne Webber has taken control of the Weirwood net from her side. She has dammed up the Weir. She has controlled its web, and its web is now sort of running into the side of the others. So who is Rohanne Webber? Rohanne Webber is Nissa Nissa turned into Night's Queen. That's who she is. So first of all, she lives at Castle Coldmoat. Coldmoat. I mean, that's like, you know, it is what it is, right? It's a Coldmoat, and it's full of revenants. That one of the lines is. Let me find it here. Coldmoat crawls with revenants. It must be said, yeah, the husbands die and their kids remain, right? And how about that line where it says, how many husbands does she have? Well, but no children. Whenever she gives birth, a demon comes by to carry off the issue. Sam Stoops' wife says she sold her babes unborn to the Lord of Seven Hells so he'd teach her his black arts. So that's just a version of the others. The others are demons that come and carries off the babies, right? And that's like, so Lady Rohan supposedly gives her babies to demons. Oh, yes. And there's those things called ice spiders, right? So we've got Rohanne Webber. All her people are called the spiders. So we've got the revenants and spiders. They live at Coldmoat. They have dammed up the Weirwood net. And of course, the people on the other side, the Osgrey people, all of their symbol is solar and Children of the Forest symbolism, because it's red and it's yellow and green, gold and green, which are the colors of summer. He wears white with gold and green, and all his people are like barleys and beans. They're all named after the foods of the ground. There's also last hero symbolism for Eustace and Eustace's people, which I'll get to in a second. So that's the setup here. You got a solar lion fighting for the humans and the children of the forest on one side. Then on the other side, we've got the others, the web, and all this stuff. But Rohan, here's the thing. Like I said, Rohan is a Nissa Nissa figure that's trapped in the realm of the others, essentially. So let me lay that out for you. And this, again, is in the Catwoman Nissa Nissa. So, okay. So to tell you why Rohan is Nissa Nissa, I will need to briefly explain the Weirwood goddess theory in general. So the Weirwood goddess theory is a collection of all the evidence that says that Nissa Nissa of the Azor Ahai story was actually a child of the forest woman, either a hybrid or a full child of the forest or a female green man, if there is such a thing, and that she was a Weirwood woman, kind of like a dryad. Just like the children of the forest have magical ties to the Weirwoods, Nissa Nissa, her symbolism suggests that she was a Weirwood woman. And there's a few different lines of symbolism that suggest this. So I just told you that Yggdrasil is an ash tree, that Martin is playing this up because the Weirwoods are literally burning trees. And so there's all this ash symbolism. Azor Ahai reborn is always said to be reborn from the ashes. He's like an ember in the ashes. When Dany hatches the dragon, she's sitting in the ashes. Ashes, ashes, ashes.
Oh.
Hey there, Quinn. How's it going?
I came on screen for a second.
What's funny is that we could see your little hand in the ashtray in the corner.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah. So that you just became an Easter egg. So the ash tree is the Weirwood tree. Here's the thing. The ash tree is associated with this really cool thing from Greek mythology called the Melii. And the Melii are dryads. They are ash tree nymphs. They are tree elf nymph ladies that are associated with the ash tree. And they arm There's all these generations of man in Greek mythology. I think it's like the second generation, whatever it is. The Melii arm these children of the earth with spears from the ash tree. So the ashwood spears are really important. All right. And what's happened is that since the Melii are the ash tree dryads, and since Nissa Nissa is essentially a weirwood dryad, what George did is he gave a ton of the Nissa Nissa characters a name with ash in it. So Melisandre, who has red eyes like a weirwood, red hair like a weirwood, and has pale skin, and then catches everything on fire like a burning weirwood. She is a spitting image of a weirwood fire priestess, and she is Melisandre of Ashai. And John even makes a joke and says, "You have ashes in your eyes." So we've got the ash tree joke right in there. And then George, so check this out. George also does jokes with a shy maid, right? So Melisandre is an Ashai maid, but then there's a ship called the Shy Maid. And then a lot of the Nissa Nissa figures get called shy, like Ygritte, when she's in the cave, she's shy as a maiden or whatever. Okay, so then you have Asha Greyjoy, Osha the Wildling. Those are both Nissa Nissa characters with Ash in the name. Then, of course, one of the 6 children of the forest that we meet, who are the actual Weirwood elf dryad figures, is named Ash. Okay, so yeah, Odin's spear is made from ash because of course Yggdrasil is an ash tree. See, there's other shy maids and ashy maids and all that stuff, but that's enough. That gives you the idea. The full details in Weirwood Goddess, but that's one line of symbolism, is that Nissa Nissa figures get ash symbolism of various kinds in order to tell us that they are like the Melii. Of course, Melii, Melisandre. So Melisandre of Ashai, Melii of the ash tree. Pretty good stuff. Okay, then we have the Catwoman symbolism. So children of the forest have slitted cat's eyes, right? Including the one named Ash. So what George has done is he's made all the Nissa Nissa people have Catwoman symbolism. So Cat, Lady Cat, and her daughter Sansa, who, quote, has cat's eyes. Peter says, "Oh, you have cat's eyes." So Cersei is a Catwoman. She's a lioness of the rock. You'll notice that Rohanne Webber, her red braid, again, almost all of the Nissa Nissa people have either red hair or they have hair that catches on fire. Like Dany's hair burns, by the way. So Rohan's red hair coils in her lap like a cat, like a sleeping cat. So that's her Catwoman symbolism. And she, let's see. I'm back up here. Oh, yes, the freckled face. That's important. The children of the forest, of course, have dappled skin. And so many of the Nissa Nissa women have freckles or dappled skin, or the light puts dappled shadows on their skin, or they have patchy skin, some version of that. So she has the freckles. And let's see, too small, too clever, much too dangerous. That's what Dunk thinks of her as. That's a child of the forest description. She's wearing a dress, that green summer dress at the last scene. When she shows up to fight at the stream, she is wearing armor like green leaves. Let me find that one. I might not have the quote, but she wears, her armor is literally like green leaves. It's like scaled armor that made to look like leaves. So of course the children of the forest dress in leaves, and the one that we saw had reddish hair, the colors of autumn and summer. So she's got that both in her dress and her armor. So that's all pretty easy to see. Then we've got, oh yes, Dunk's dream. And of course, at the risk of missing the obvious, Lady Rohan, the Nissa Nissa Weirwood goddess figure, is the one who builds the Weir. Okay? She builds the Weir. And so, yeah, I mean, it's right there. Okay, so here's the dream that Dunk has of her. Starts off, Dunk's head was full of dragons, red and black, full of checky lions, old shields, battered boots, full of streams and moats and dams, and paper stamped with the king's great seal he could not read. And she was there as well, the red widow, Rohan of the cold moat. He could see her freckled face, her slender arms, her long red braid. And then it says, drowsing at long last, Dunk dreamed. He was running through a glade in the heart of Watts Wood, running toward Rohan, and she was shooting arrows at him, just like Artemis. Each shaft she loosed flew true and pierced him through the chest, yet the pain was strangely sweet. He should have turned and fled, but he ran toward her instead, running slowly as you did in dreams, as if the very air had turned to honey. Now that's really important because the Melii, ash tree nymphs, they produce honey in both Greek and Norse myth. In Norse myth, the Melii feed baby Zeus on their ash tree honey sap. So it's a very important thing about the Melii. And the honey, of course, is a common food of the gods, fire of the gods symbol. So here we have the Weirwood goddess turning the air to honey as Dunk runs toward her. And she's filling him with quivers and says, her quivers seemed to have no end of shafts. Her eyes were gray and green and full of mischief. Your gown brings out the color of your eyes, he meant to say to her, but she was not wearing any gown or any clothes at all. Across her small breasts was a faint spray of freckles, and her nipples were red and hard as little berries. The arrows made him look like some great porcupine as he went stumbling to her feet, but somehow she still found the strength to grab her braid. Or he still found the strength to grab her braid. With one hard yank, he pulled her down on top of him and kissed her. All right, so shit ton of symbolism here. If you remember from the Red Wedding, when Azor Ahai goes to meet Nissa Nissa, he does a lot of things at once. He turns into a weirwood tree and he dies and he gets sacrificed to the weirwood tree. That's how Azor Ahai goes into the weirwood tree. He has to die. And so Rob, at the Red Wedding, he is doing the Azor Ahai thing. He sprouts a bunch of corals. And when you sprout corals, it makes you look like a tree because the corals are wood, like little branches. And when they stick out from you, you then now have tree branches. So essentially what we have is Nissa Nissa shooting arrows at Dunk and killing him, filling him with arrows, making him look like a tree, just like her. Her nipples are like berries. Chuckle if you want, but of course that makes her like a tree because trees have berries. So she is living there. She's dressed in green leaves when she wears clothes. She's got the berries. She's in the forest, and she's turning Dunk into a tree. And then Dunk does what? He falls down at her knees, just like she was the weirwood tree, and he was a sacrifice that's just had his throat cut and is bleeding out into the tree. Then he pulls her braid and pulls her down. That's Azor Ahai pulling down the moon, which is symbolic to the weirwood tree. And that's what happens. The moon gets pulled down when Azor Ahai does all of this magical ritual, killing Nissa Nissa, going into the weirwoods. This all has to do with pulling down the moon and causing the long night. And so this dream of Watts Wood gets superimposed with the actual burning Watts Wood, right? Because as soon as Dunk wakes up from the dream, he sees the wood is on fire. So literally he's having this dream while the wood is burning. So that tells you can sort of combine those two scenes. You imagine Nissa Nissa, the weirwood goddess, in a burning wood, and Dunk is running to her and dying and basically falling down in front of her, but then pulling her down. So now check out the quote about when Dunk wakes from this dream, right? He woke suddenly at the sound of a shout. In the darkened cellar, all was confusion. Curses and complaints echoed back and forth, and the men were stumbling over one another as they fumbled for their spears or breeches. No one knew what was happening. Egg found the tallow candle and got it lit, shed some light upon the scene. Dunk was the first one up the steps. He almost collided with Sam Stoops rushing down, puffing like a bellows and babbling incoherently. Dunk had to hold him by both shoulders to keep him from falling. Sam, what's wrong? The sky, the old man whimpered. The sky. So this is a Weirwood Portal scene for Dunk. Just as he reaches and joins with the Weirwood Moon Maiden, pulling her down on top of him, then he suddenly finds himself in a dark cellar below the tower, which is a Weirwood symbol. So he's like down in the Weirwood cave. Then you notice we got a guy named Sam huffing like a bellows, just like Sam Tarley came out of the well at the Night Fort puffing like a blacksmith's bellows. And Sam always does that. And so again, we're going to see now sword forging symbolism happen. Now that we've got the bellows puffing, we can forge a magic sword, right? And so a dragon named Egg lights a candle, and people are terrified of something that's happening in the sky, which turns out to be the rising of a wrong sun. The sun was rising in the west. It was a long moment before Dunk realized what that meant. Watts wood is afire, he said in a hushed voice. They were too far away to make out the flames, but the red glow engulfed half the western horizon, and above the light the stars were vanishing. The king's crown was already half gone, obscured behind a veil of the rising smoke. Fire and sword, she said. Okay, so it's a wrong sun, right? The sun is rising in the west. It's not supposed to rise in the west. So this evil sun that's actually blocking out the stars and sky, this is Azor Ahai, the dark solar king, coming to power at the time of the long night. Hopefully you're familiar enough with my symbolism to understand that. And you can see the crown is disappearing behind the smoke. So this is perfect long night symbolism. The whole point of the God's eye alignment in the sky is that it's the moon moving in front of the sun, right? To create that eclipse. That is the God's eye eclipse. And then when the moon explodes in front of the sun, that black smoke billows outward and covers the sun. That's what transforms the sun into the lion of night, into the black sun, the darkened sun figure. And so here we have the burning weirwoods clouding the sky and turning the sun black, and he's losing his crown because this is the death of the solar king, the corruption of the solar king, all that stuff. Then Dunk says fire and sword, because this is all about the forging of Lightbringer, at least the Lightbringer myth, you know. So we've got the wrong sun itself is the Azor Ahai reborn figure. He's losing his king's crown, and there's a fiery sword, and the sky is turning dark. Now we look at the fire itself. The fire burned until morning. No one in Standfast slept that night. Before long, they could smell the smoke and see flames dancing in the distance like girls in scarlet skirts. That's just like at Danny's alchemical wedding, where the flames looked like they were dancers in skirts. They all wondered if the fire would engulf them. Dunk stood behind the parapets, his eyes burning, watching for riders in the night. So now Dunk has eyes of fire. By the way, Dunk is the last hero. I shouldn't have to, hopefully you figured that out already. So he's now a transformed last hero. He's gone through the Weirwood net, and he's got eyes of fire, and he is a watcher on the walls now too. So that's implying him as a Night's Watch. So then we go into Watts Wood. We find, like I said, a few places that were still burning, fiery islands in a sea of ash and cinders. Elsewhere, the trunks of burned trees thrust like blackened spears into the sky. So now we have the ash trees turned into spears, symbolism from the Malii. It says, other trees had fallen and lay athwart the west way with limbs charred and broken, dull red fires smoldering in their hollow hearts. There were hot spots on the forest floor as well, places where the smoke hung in the air like a hot gray haze. So we've got trees with hearts, guys. So heart trees. And we've got the dull red fires smoldering inside the hearts. That is a symbol of Azor Ahai inside the Weirwood net, who's like an ember in the ashes. Bloodraven's eye is like an ember in the ashes. Melisandre talks about even an ember in the ashes can spark a great blaze when Azor Ahai is reborn. So here we have the heart tree with an ember smoldering inside, fiery islands in a sea of ash and cinders. That's giving you, so a sea of ash, just that's green seer language right there, right? The whole idea of the Weirwood net as a body of water is Ravenous Reader's green sea, green seer wordplay, right? Green Sea, the Green Seers. The realm that the Green Seers inhabit is kind of like a dark ocean and like a green sea. And so, like I said, the stream here is the Weirwood net, right? After the Weir Dam has been made, the water diverts into the fields like a spider's web. So that literally is the network of the Weirwood net. The Weirwood net is always like water. Bloodraven says, the Weirwoods stand astride the river of time. That's Weir symbolism. Like, think about a tree standing astride a river that isn't moved by the river. That's like a dam. That's like a weir. So George is telling you that the Weirwoods function like a weir on the river of time. So that's why the Weirwood net has always got all this aquatic symbolism. So, Rohanne Webber, let's see here. Pull up my notes. Let's see here. Oh, yes. Also, so Rohanne Webber, the word Rohan sounds a bit like Rowan. Now, she serves Lord Rowan. A rowan is a kind of tree, but a rowan is also called a mountain ash tree. So even her name, Rohan, is synonymous with ash tree. So literally, I mean, it's just so many layers. She's got the Catwoman symbolism. She's got all the red weirwood coloring, the burning tree, the Weir Dam, and now also the berry nipples. You know, she's like a tree in the forest. The Artemis moon symbolism, and literally Rohan sounding like Rowan. Rowan trees also have red berries. Thank you for reminding me that. Yes, Rowan trees have red berries, which is kind of like the Weirwoods having red leaves. So you got these red berries up in the canopy. The Rowan trees, the red berries actually have a black 5-pointed shape on the bottom of them. So they're kind of like stars as well. I don't know if George is thinking about that, but yeah, mountain ash is Rowan. And the thing about a mountain ash is that a mountain ash isn't actually an ash tree. It's just called that, but it works. And George uses the mountain ash and Rowans to also tie into all of this ash tree symbolism. So yes, they're starry nipples. That's right. Starry nipple berries in the cosmic tree. This is what you're coming for here. All 343 of you. Make sure to click like. Make sure you subscribe to this crazy YouTube channel. If you're here and you're having fun, you might as well, right? So then we've got, let me pull up my notes again. So the peasants that fight with Dunk are last hero people, and that's going to tie into also implicating the spiders as others. So it says, the next day, a dozen would-be warriors found their way to Standfast to assemble among the chickens, because Standfast has tons of chickens. So you got a dozen. They send 4 of them home and end up with 8. But originally there were a dozen. And it says, will we get swords and helms and chainmail? The youngest of the 3 Watts wanted to know. Why, sure you will, said Bennis, just as soon as you kill one of the widow's knights and strip his bloody corpse. So there's an implication that these dozen warriors are supposed to maybe wear the armor of the others or something, which is kind of weird. Not sure what that's supposed to mean, but it does make me think of John wearing the ice armor. But the more important thing is that 3 of these people are named Watt. And I just said Watt's wood means woods of power, right? So you've got 3 of these last heroes group are named after the Weirwood tree symbol, okay? The rest of them are named after beans and melons and other parts of the harvest. So these people, these soldiers that we're training over here at Standfast, it's a dozen of them. They are literally, they've been harvested. Okay. They're like food. They're like the Weirwood trees, the 3 Watts. It says Sam Stoops had stuffed some old Sam Stoops had stuffed some old sacks with soiled straw. What are you doing, George? Sam Stoops had stuffed some old sacks with soiled straw. Sam Stoops had stuffed some old sacks with soiled straw. Yeah. So the soiled straw is important. And it says those became their foes. So they're practicing against these sacks of straw. But of course, all of the whites are always described as being like straw and like parchment and tallow candles, and they go up in flames very quick. So they're fighting against foes that are like whites. Then it says, Dunk is thinking to himself, and he says, if his sword had been steel instead of pine, he would have slain each of them 6 times. You're dead once I get past your point, he warned them, hammering at their legs and arms to drive the lesson home. So now these are dead warriors. And there's like that symbolism continues. It says, so Useless should have fucked a few more peasant wenches while he still had a bit of sap left in them sad old balls of his. This is Brown Bennis talking. If he had sowed himself a nice crop of bastard boys back then, might be we'd have some soldiers now. So this idea of turning bastard boys into soldiers, well, that sounds like the others, right? Because the bastards of the north are called snows, and there's a lot of symbolism about the Snowgate and Queen Alisane and all that stuff about, John being a promised other baby. Part of the idea is that the bastards of the north were the ones that maybe got sacrificed to the others because they're named Snows. So you give the baby Snows to the others. They're the bastards. And of course, even if that's not true, John himself is a stolen other baby, and he is a bastard and a Snow. So turning bastards into soldiers sounds like others talk. And then right after that, it says, they seem no worse than any other peasant levy. Dunk had marched with a few such while squiring for Sir Arlen. Aye, said Sir Bennis, in a fortnight they might stand their own against some other lot of peasants. Knights, though, he shook his head and spat. So they're no worse than the others. They might stand against the others, but only in a fortnight. So, of course, as I've said, fortnight is always a clue about night fort, meaning long night, the others, Knight's King. If you see fortnight too many times, then you think about the night fort. So here we have our last heroes, soldiers that might be like kind of dead, and they might be like the harvest, and they might be like weirwood trees. They might stand against the others in a fortnight or at the night fort. And then here's another line. When Dunk tells Eustace how poorly they did, Eustace says, it was their first time. Their fathers and brothers were as bad or worse when they began their training. My sons worked with them before we went to help the king. Every day for a good fortnight. They made soldiers of them. His mustache quivered. It may take longer than a fortnight. So they'll be soldiers in a fortnight, and they'll stand against the others in a fortnight. You guys see how this works, right? Only it was not Sir Arlen of Pennytree standing over him at all. Okay, I'm sorry. This needs some introduction. This is one of Dunk's dreams. He's dreaming about burying his horse in Dorne. But as in the way of dreams, the dream morphs as it goes. And it says, only it wasn't Sir Arlen of Pennytree standing over him at all. It was Sir Bennis of the Brown Shield. The Brown Knight only cackled. Dunk the lunk, he said, gutting slow but certain. Never knew a man to live with his entrails hanging out. Red froth bubbled on his lips. He turned and spat, and the white sands drank it down. Treb was standing behind him with an arrow in his eye, weeping red tears. Treb is one of the peasants. So he's weeping red tears. That's Weirwood stigmata, because the Weirwoods have red tears. There was Wet Wat, too, his head cut near in half, with old Lem and red-eyed Pate and all the rest. They had all been chewing sour leaf with Bennis, Dunk thought at first, but then he realized it was blood trickling from their mouths. Dead, he thought, all dead, and the Brown Knight brayed. Aye, so best get busy. You've got more graves to dig, lunk. 8 for them, and 1 for me, and 1 for old so useless, and 1 last one for your bald head boy. So did you count there? 8 graves, 1 for me, 9, 1 for useless, 10, 1 for the last one, the bald head boy, 11. And then Bennis himself makes 12. No, Bennis is already counted. But we also talked about Sir Arlen of Pennytree a second ago. He was dead, standing there talking to him. So you've got, and Makar. So you got 12 dead people with Dunk being the 13th. That's what we got. So last hero math. And more importantly, those peasant soldiers are implied as dead, and they're implied with the Weirwood stigmata. They've got blood coming out of their mouth as if they've been chewing sour leaf. So Weirwood stigmata and dead symbolism for the soldiers that Dunk is going to fight with and that he's training. Then it says, "My lord," said Dunk, the woman could be here upon the morrow with all her men. They are good lads, he thought, but they will soon be dead lads if they go up against the knights of Coldmoat. There must be some other way." Some other way. Sir Eustace ran his fingers lightly across the little lion's shield. I will have no justice from Lord Rohan, nor the king. He grasped Dunk by the forearm. It comes to me that in days gone by, when green kings ruled, you could pay a man a blood price if you had slain one of his animals or peasants. A blood price? Dunk was dubious. Some other way, you said. I have some coin laid by. It was only a little claret on the cheeks, Sir Bennis says. If I could pay the man a silver stag and 3 to the woman for the insult, I could and would, if she would take the dam down. When Sir Lucas informed me of what had been done to my poor Dake, I swore a holy vow that I would never again set foot inside that castle unless to take possession. So you see, I cannot go there, Sir Duncan, not to pay the blood price, nor for any other reason. I cannot. Dunk understood. I could go, my lord. I swore no vows. You are a good man, Sir Duncan, a brave knight and true. Sir Eustace gave Dunk's arm a squeeze. Would that the gods had spared my Alisane. You are the sort of man I had always hoped that she might marry. A true knight, Sir Duncan, a true knight. So Alisane is his dead daughter. And thought that was kind of funny. It goes on, they talk about promising Dunk his dead daughter a bunch of times. So Dunk, for some reason, should marry a dead daughter of Sir Eustace. I think that Sir Eustace is like a green man, kind of like a green seer figure here. He dresses in green and gold. He's very old. He lives atop the tower. There's some other symbolism that I think reinforces that. So think about Garth the Green. One of his daughters was Maris the Most Fair, married Uthor of the High Tower. So marrying a daughter of Garth is kind of a thing that last hero figures do sometimes. But the more important thing, like I said, the lads will soon be dead lads if they go up against the Knights of Coldmoat. There must be some other way. Some other way. So guys, if we fight the others head on, if we fight the spiders head on, we're going to lose. There must be some other way to resolve the conflict. This is talking about the long night, like so hard, y'all. And he says, in the days gone by, when the Green Kings ruled. And then when Dunk goes to Rohan and proposes the blood price, we read that quote. Rohan says, what, does he think this is the age of heroes or something? So it's like strongly implied, this is the age of heroes. When the Green Kings ruled, that's what we're talking about here. And the blood price. So he says, I can't go to Coldmoat to pay the blood price. So somebody, guys, has to go across. By the way, if you haven't figured this out, the stream symbolizes the wall. The wall is the dividing line between the realm of the others and the realm of the living. So obviously the stream is like the wall. The wall is also called a frozen stream a bunch of times. Oh, somebody's just getting the Riders of Rohan joke. Yes. Rohanne Webber trains the best horses in the Reach. So she is the rider Rohan. Yes. And also Dunk wants to ride her. So let's go back to that scene. Okay, guys, that hot scene right at the end there where she's trying to give Dunk the horse and Dunk's like, no, I want something else. He takes the braid, right? But did they fuck? Did they? There's a gap there in the narrative where it stops. And then Dunk is like walking up to Egg and Egg's like, oh, I thought she was going to give you a horse. And he's like, oh, I wanted something else. Here's the thing. She gave Dunk her hair. She gave Dunk an heir. And she tried to give him the blood red horse with red hair. And instead, he took the red hair of the blood red woman. So it's implied that she gave Dunk her blood and that she gave Dunk her heir. So this could mean two things. It could mean that they actually did have sex right there and that she got pregnant and that Dunk gave her an heir right there. Or this could be stolen other baby symbolism, right? So the whole point of Rohan having all this Nissa Nissa symbolism, but being trapped in the realm of the others, is that after Nissa Nissa dies, she must become Night's Queen or something like that. She must be stuck inside the Weirwood net and then has something to do with creating the others. This is an idea that we've been picking at for a long time. But this, because think about Lady Stoneheart, for example. Lady Stoneheart is a Catwoman figure. She gets tossed into the Green Fork and dies. So that's her dying and going into the Weirwood net. She has the Weirwood stigmata at the Red Wedding. By the way, the Red Wedding, that's Azor Ahai and Nissa Nissa. That's the original Red Wedding. And then we find Lady Cat as a corpse queen, right? She's literally a corpse, and she's in charge of the Brotherhood. She's living inside of a Weirwood cave. So this is a dead Nissa Nissa figure inside of a Weirwood cave. But now the Brotherhood is all evil and messed up, and they're more like the others. They're not protecting people anymore. And her speech is like a river of ice and hate. So there's this question we've had about Nissa Nissa and Night's Queen. I had a stream called The Weirwood Goddesses a month ago where we talked about all this stuff for like 3 hours. So that's what Nissa Nissa is doing, or that's what Rohan is doing. She's like a Nissa Nissa sitting at the middle of the weirwoodnet web on the other side, but she wants to be rescued, right? She's kind of trapped. She's trapped against her will. She's really a prisoner, and she's a prisoner of the will of her father. Okay. Her father's will is haunting her. And to me, that's like something about like the dead green man, or the dead, like, who is Nissa Nissa's father? I'm not sure, but possibly like a Garth type figure, a green man, if she's a Weirwood figure. So it's interesting that the father's will is like sort of trapping her. And let's see here. Let's see. Yes, there is a Webber in the Golden Company that nurses a grudge to lost lands. Some people have speculated that Webber could be the a relative of the cousin that would have inherited Coldmoat had Rohanne not married. But you can read about that if you want to. But the hair symbolism, let's go back to that, because that is important. So remember, I've said that with the videos that we just did, the Lord Snow video, there's this pattern of the last hero rescuing a child from Night's Queen, or you could say stealing a child so that it can't be turned into an other. So remember, Rohanne Webber, it's said that the demons come, she gives her babies to the demons, right? So she's like Night's Queen, giving her children to the others. And then when she's freed, when the last hero comes and defeats the bad guy, Lucas Longinch, who's like a Night's King figure dressed in black, then he takes the hair and the blood of Night's Queen as a souvenir. So to me, that's definitely just like Ned taking Lyanna's heir, John, her blood, from the scene after the battle. But like I said, it could also doubly imply that Dunk and Rohan actually did fuck there, and that if she had that child would then be the heir of Standfast. Because here's the whole thing, right? She marries Eustace for a few years, then Eustace dies. That consolidates her rule over the whole area, Standfast and Coldmoat. She would have taken the Osgrey name, and the thing is, then she married Sir Gerald the Golden and went to Casterly Rock and ruled with him there. So some people have speculated she wouldn't do that unless she had a kid with Sir Eustace, who would be her heir to hold down those lands. Because when they were talking about Sir Gerald the Golden possibly being her suitor, they were like, well, Gerald won't leave Lannisport, and it's implied that she won't leave Coldmoat to go marry him. So like, how would she marry Gerald later? Well, she must have had an heir to inherit the lands. And there are Osgreys still in the story. So she either had a kid with Eustace Osgrey, or she had a kid with Dunk. No, I'm not talking about any of the kids that she had with Gerald. Those are all Gerald's kids. What I'm talking about is in the 7 or 8 years between the events of the Sworn Sword and when she has her first kid with Gerald Lannister, she's married to Eustace for a few years. Some people have speculated that she must have had a kid with Eustace. That's what I'm saying. And I'm also saying that kid might not be Eustace's. It might be Dunk's kid, if there is such a kid. But we don't know that yet. So that's just a bit of a rabbit trail. But symbolically, Dunk is taking her hair and her blood when he leaves. So that's pretty cool. More stolen other baby stuff. And it's implied that Egg is functioning as the stolen other baby. Rohan says you could stay here and Egg could be a squire with all the other squires. So she's kind of like saying Egg could join the others. And then he's like, no, I'm taking Egg and we're leaving, and I'm taking your heir also and we're leaving. So I think that's what Egg is is doing here in the story. And there's a line that says, Egg says, I don't want a wife. I want to be a knight of the Kingsguard. Live only to serve and defend the king. The Kingsguard are sworn not to wed. So Egg becoming a Kingsguard is like giving him little other symbolism there. So kind of got the picture there. So they go and you've got Knight's Queen stuck on the land of the others. You've got a drought in the land of the living, and they're worried about the invasion of the others. So they send a champion, Dunk, who was training dead men to be his companions. And he goes and he fights in the stream, which is serving as a symbol of the wall. All that Night Fort symbolism tells us that we should think about this as a battle at the Night Fort at the wall. And then, of course, the fight being in the stream actually implies that the fight might be happening inside the Weirwood net at some level. You could say that they're fighting over the Weirwood net, or you could say that they're fighting in the Weirwood net. Similarly, when another great last hero versus the Night's King battle is Daemon Targaryen versus Aemond One-Eye Targaryen, right? The battle above the God's Eye. You have the Ice Dragon and the Fire Dragon. They're fighting each other. Well, they're fighting over the God's Eye. The God's Eye is the symbol of the Weirwood net. So again, you're either fighting in the Weirwood net or we're fighting over the Weirwood net. There's a lot of these battles with the last hero and a Night's King figure that happen in the water, like Ares Oakheart. He gets beheaded at the Greenblood. That's another one like that. So they battle in the water, and Dunk wins. And then, like I said, the two sides reconcile. Then the rains come and the land is happy. So it tells us a lot about what we should expect to see at the end of the long night. We should see that there is some sort of blood price that needs to be paid. There's an issue of stealing heirs and who is the rightful descendant and all that stuff. And we've got to heal the divisions instead of just plain fighting it out. So I mean, it's a really great long night scene with this entire story, and the themes of the story totally complement our idea of the long night and how that works. So I love the symbolism in this story, not only because it's so great and not only because Rohan is hot, but because the themes of this story, this might be like one of the best thematic parallels of what the long night was actually like. And of course, Eustace Osgrey, he's not blameless. Of course, he lied to Dunk. He sent his sons out to die. He chose the Black Dragon, the wrong side in the war, if you will. And he set up Dunk to go and with basically false accusations against Rohan. So it just tells you, like, the humans aren't blameless in this. Of course not. The humans are the ones who cut down the trees and killed the children and all that kind of stuff. So we can see that there's fault on both sides, and that ultimately it's a reconciliation that we need to fix everything. So pretty cool stuff. I don't know how to change names likes it. You know, I haven't checked my PayPals this entire time. I've just been going. Let's tune in. Let's see how many questions we got. I'll have to catch the stream later. What do you think of Rohan's symbolism as a Nissa Nissa Catwoman means for her, is in store for her? World of Ice and Fire is vague about her disappearance. Okay, cool. So we're in the perfect position to answer that question now. So she disappears at the end. Using the symbolism, what could that mean? Well, I don't know, because I don't know what happens to Nissa Nissa at the end. I would think that Nissa Nissa at the end is going to kind of like join back with nature or something like that. So perhaps Rohan went back home or something. Like it should be some sort of like happy ending thing, I would think. Some sort of quiet, peaceful sort of ending. Yeah, she gets stuck in a weirwood tree. Literally, Rohan was out riding, you know, her dress snagged on a tree, and she starved to death. Couldn't free herself. No. Rohan goes into the cellar mines of Casterly Rock to get herself some gold. It gets caught in her cellar. So there, yeah, maybe. That's of course, there are lots of cavern symbolism at Casterly Rock, so that's a way that George could imply lost in the Weirwood net symbolism. Definitely. Yeah, the question about is, Allison, what happens to Nissa Nissa at the end? So she's killed by Azor Ahai. She goes into the Weirwood net. She has something to do with making the others or turning Azor Ahai's power against him or something. But then at the end, after this is all resolved, like what happens to Nissa Nissa? That's an open question. We don't know. So I can't really use that to speculate. But I do think we'll see it in a future Duncan Egg book, like I said. Maria Lind with a thank you super chat or PayPal. Thank you. And you're quite welcome. Oh, a Merry Christmas from Miss Lazarus. Thank you, Miss Lazarus. I appreciate that. Very generous of you. Thank you for your many hours of thought and research. Praise Garth from Harmony Thomas. All right. No questions, just thank yous. Well, we got one question at the beginning. All right, cool. So while I go over my notes and see if there's any symbolisms that I forgot to read, I will take last call for questions or comments. So if I missed any of your questions that you've been trying to get in while I was talking this whole time, you can tag me now. Let's see here. Oh, yeah, there's some good falling star symbolism when Dunk goes to sleep on top of the roof of the Standfast Tower. It says, Egg was asleep by the time Dunk reached the roof. He lay on his back with his hands behind his head and stared up at the sky. The stars were everywhere, thousands and thousands of them. It reminded him of a night at Ashford Meadow before the tourney started. He had seen a falling star that night. Falling stars were supposed to bring you luck, so he told Tanzel to paint it on his shield, but Ashford had been anything but lucky for him. Before the tourney ended, he had almost lost a hand and a foot, and 3 good men had lost their lives. I gained a squire, though. Egg was with me when I rode away from Ashford. That was the only good thing to come of all that happened. He hoped no stars fell tonight. So, ton of symbolism there, reinforcing everything I've just said, basically. So remember I mentioned, yes, ash ford. So a ford is a crossing of a river. An ash, of course, is an ash tree. So again, think of Yggdrasil and the ash tree nymphs and all that stuff. So the ford gives us the Weir symbol. The ash is an ash tree. So ash ford is perfect. At Ashford Meadow, what happens? Well, we get basically a visual depiction of the falling star as dragon symbolism. During the fight, Arion, the dragon, is whirling the morning star, and he's hitting Dunk, who's like a tree, over and over and over again. This is all about that storm god thunderbolt myth. Remember, the storm god's thunderbolt strikes the tree, sets a tree ablaze, and that burning tree is how man possesses the fire of the gods. The weirwood is really a burning tree that gives man the fire of the gods. So the idea of a thunderbolt hitting a tree, which is really a thunderbolt, is just another falling star symbol. So you got a falling star hitting a tree. What is Dunk's sigil? It's a falling star and an elm tree. So then here, Dunk at Ashford Meadow, where Dunk, brings his falling star and tree sigil, he has it painted. Literally, we have the falling star symbolism play out, and the place is called Ashford Meadow. So it's the place where the star fell and hit the tree and set it on fire, but it's also like a dragon and a morning star and all that stuff. So all that's reinforced in this paragraph here about the falling star. And then also it says, oh, but he gained a squire named Egg. So he gained a dragon's egg. When the star fell, he gained a dragon's egg. And of course, the dragon's eggs are symbols of the meteors, the moon dragon egg from which the dragon meteors hatch. So yeah, go ahead and smash the like button, folks, because I can't do the symbolism any harder than this. This is as hard as I can go. Most spiders don't hunt. They spin webs and wait for their prey to wander in, like the web of weirwood roots across Westeros. Yeah, and almost very much like the weir, the fishing weir that traps fish. Yes, the children also trap Bloodraven and the weirwood throne. That's exactly right. The green seers are like the fish that are trapped in literally in the weirwood net or in the roots of the weirwood. Literally, imagine the roots of the weirwood like the fishing weir, physically trapping the green seer fish. So yes, it's all right there. And yes, a dragon in a tree. That's Azor Ahai is a dragon in a tree. That's exactly what he is. Oh yeah, when Sir Eustace, when Dunk and Egg go to Coldmoat to confront the Weirwood goddess, Sir Eustace goes with them as far as the stream. Right before they stream, they see a dead tree cat, which is cool. It's like dead Nissa Nissa, because dead Nissa Nissa is a tree woman. She's a cat woman, and she dies, goes into the tree. And so then there's a dead tree cat. He's like, I should stop right here. And then they cross that. And right after that is when they cross the stream into the land of the others. So it's basically just like a totem of dead Nissa Nissa in a tree. So yeah, pretty good stuff. Great stuff, actually. And oh yes, before Dunk goes to meet Rohan and cross the stream, Eustace tells him a story about an ancestor of his fighting over a stream. It says they fought for half a day, the Gold Lion and the Checky. The Lannister was armed with a Valyrian sword that no common steel could match. So the little lion was hard-pressed, his shield in ruins. In the end, bleeding from a dozen grievous wounds, last hero symbolism, with his own blade broken in his hand, last hero has a broken sword, he then threw himself headlong at his foe. King Lancel cut him near in half, the singers say, but as he died, the little lion found the gap in the king's armor beneath his arm and plunged his dagger home. When their king died, the Westerman turned back and the Reach was saved. The old man stroked the broken shield as tenderly as if it had been a child. Aye, my lord, Bennis croaked, we could use a man like that today. Dunk and me had a look at your stream, my lord, dry as a bone and not from drought. So the inspiration for Dunk when he goes to cross the stream is this story about a last hero figure taking a dozen wounds, broken sword, but he beats the king, think Night's King, and saves the realm, sacrificing himself. So pretty great stuff there. And just, again, reinforcing this all as a long night confrontation. When ducking down beneath an overhanging limb of Wat's wood, Dunk plucked a leaf and crumpled it between his fingers. It fell apart like a 1,000-year-old parchment in his hand. So the Weirwoods are like parchment because they contain knowledge. They're like libraries. So we've seen that parchment Weirwood symbolism a ton, library Weirwood symbolism. So just thought I'd mention that. And let's see, dead daughter, talked about that. Last hero peasants, we got that. There is some high tower symbolism for Eustace. So the tower itself, stand fast, it's black stone on the bottom and pale gray stone above because it had to be rebuilt at some point. And the high tower is a white stone tower with that black stone at the base. So that's kind of interesting. And remember I said that Eustace offered, he's wearing the green and gold. So he's like an old Garth figure and he's offering his daughter to Dunk, who's like a last hero. So that again reminded me of the Uther Hightower legend. And so this guy is living in a tower. Also it says, they reined up in front of the little Dobbin Wattle stable that nestled at the tower's foot, half hidden under a misshapen heap of purple moss. If you remember that half-dead weirwood tree at the Isle of Ravens in Old Town also has the purple moss. And it says the old man's gray gelding was in one of the stalls. So you got the gray horse. Sleipnir was a gray horse. That's Odin's horse. So there's seems like general Weirwood Odin symbolism and also Hightower symbolism. And of course, the Hightower is a Weirwood symbol as well. It's crowned with the red flame, just like the Weirwoods are crowned with the red leaves that look like flame. And Dunk says, oh, it's nowhere near as big as Old Town. Another really important, okay, I knew there was something I was forgetting. So remember I said that the stream is like the wall and Stand Fast is like the lands of the living and Coldmoat is like the lands of the others. So over and over, Dunk talks about what is he going to do after he's done at Coldmoat. He talks about going to the wall over and over and over and over. He says, I'm going to go to the wall when he leaves. He says, maybe I'll go to the wall, all this and that. And then they finally do resolve to ride north at the end. So you imagine the Coldmoat is more like a heart of winter place. It's across enemy lines in the territory of the others. And so after you leave that, you have to go back south, back down to the wall. So after Dunk leaves Coldmoat, he talks about going to the wall. And that's because you have to go back to the wall with your stolen other baby after you're done beating up Night's King and giving a kiss to Night's Queen and taking her heir. So there you go. Oh, Allison's asking about the color red. So, right, like Rouge, Rogaire, Rohan, Rorgen Biter. Yeah, well, I mean, it's all red moon symbolism. Nissa Nissa's color is always red, you know, because it's a bleeding and burning moon event. So and that's one of the reasons why they all have red hair, so they look like they can have a burning head of flame and blood. J-Lord asks, Webber is sworn to House Rowan. So, right, that's why I made the point earlier in the stream that Gerald the Golden Lannister marrying Rohan, who would have been an Osgrey at that point, is marrying down a couple of pegs. But we're told that Rohan was the, quote, beloved second wife of Gerald Lannister, which means that he married for love. And you can see Rohan's quite charming. She's quite the fox. So Gerald the Golden married her, you know, because he wanted to out of love, or because they both conspired and worked spellcraft to kill everyone that was in their way. Take your pick. Choose your own adventure. But it'd be one of those two. Talk Studios is telling me that okay, so Sleipnir's name is Thunder, and Thunder is a gray horse. So Dunk is riding a Sleipnir horse for sure. I picked that out before. But there's another horse called Svaldefari, or whatever that is, which means fire, and Blood Eye. So there's a fire horse and a thunder horse. So this is very Norse when we see these two horses next to each other. That's pretty awesome. Similar thing with Jaime. He's got honor and glory. And one wears the white barding of the Kingsguard, and one the red of House Lannister. So it's probably Svatilfari. Okay, cool. Yeah. Yeah, there you go. Duncan literally means dark-haired or dark warrior. Looking at you, Jon Snow. Black was always his color. Very cool. Yeah, Jon Snow and Dunk are very much parallel characters. They are last hero types. Absolutely. And let's see here. Looking through my comments. So the story happens in summer, but it's like a drought summer. So it's essentially, it's the wrong temperature, but the land is dying. I think that's the important thing. And it's also after the spring. If you remember the Rhaegar symbolism, there's the year of the false spring, and then everything plunges right into winter after that. And we have that horrendous, winter that freezes King's Landing, and that's when Rhaegar rides off with Lyanna. So similar thing here. We've got a summer sickness just in the past, and then everyone's just kind of dying. It's just, instead of a winter, it's a summer. But remember that we wouldn't want a summer without end either. That would be just as bad. So very cool. So yes, Nick, I do think that Rohan was planning on using Dunk to kill the Long Inch from the moment that she saw him. Absolutely. And she maybe she didn't like Dunk at all. She could have just been manipulating him and using him, catfishing him, if you will, this whole time. It's possible. But I think she probably did like Dunk. Dunk seems charming, but there's no doubt. I mean, she's sizing him up. Oh, how strong are you? Are you strong as you look? Like, yeah, she's definitely thinking this could be my champion. This could be the guy that defeats Long Inch. Maybe she was planning on marrying Dunk. That could have been one of her options, to basically just for him to be the suitor. But I guess just too lowborn and too thick to sort of get, because she asked him to take her service, right? So think about that. If Dunk had taken her service, that gets Dunk into the castle where she can continue to charm him. And yeah, potentially that's what she was going to do at first. But eventually she came up with a plan of manipulating the circumstances to create that trial by combat so that she could send Longinch against Dunk and use Dunk to kill Longinch. So yes, I think we should assume that she's working that situation because that's her only goal in life at that point is to get out of this situation where she's going to be forced to marry Longinch. So yeah, Dunk's pretty thick, man. He's pretty slow. Does not take the clues. And yes, the Weirwoods also are a nod to Bob Weir, but that's like the smallest implication of the name Weirwood. The much more important reference is the reference to the Weir that's a dam. And also Weir, W-E-R-E, like werewolf. If you think of Weirwoods as werewoods, then that translates to manwoods or man trees, which is exactly what they are. Literally people trees. So all of that is intended. Yeah. Charmingly dense. Yep, that's Dunk. That's the angle he's playing. Yeah, I think she liked him too. I think so too. But in any case, I think that's all the symbolism that I was able to pull out of there. There might be one or two lines that I missed. I listened to the whole thing yesterday and was picking out all these quotes. But yeah. Oh, here's a good quote that kind of gives you the theme of, well, A Song of Ice and Fire in general, but also this whole George's take on patriarchy and power and equality and stuff. It says, "Common boys fight with wooden swords too. Only theirs are sticks and broken branches. Egg, these men may seem fools to you. They won't know the proper names for bits of armor or the arms of the great houses or which king it was who abolished the Lord's right to the first knight, but treat them with respect all the same. You are a squire born of noble blood, but you're still a boy. Most of them will be men grown. A man has his pride, no matter how low-born he may be. You would seem just as lost and stupid in their villages. And if you doubt that, go hoe a row and shear sheep." So pretty cool little equality screed there, where he's making a point to Egg. He's like, well, you may know all this with your castle training, but there's stuff that you don't know that these guys know that's important too. And to Egg's credit, he's like, oh, well, maybe I could teach them about the great houses and they could teach me which plants are safe to eat and which berries are poisonous. So pretty cool. And of course, all of A Song of Ice and Fire constantly, George is highlighting the role of peasants and the lords and how they're unequal and all that kind of stuff. So just more of that here. And that's the Sworn Sword. And that's Rohanne Webber. She's an awesome character on her own. She's got a dangling mystery that we're waiting to hear about. And symbolism-wise, she's one of the very best Nissa Nissa turning into Knight's Queen figures that we have anywhere. And by the way, if you want more of that Nissa Nissa Knight's Queen talk, check out Signs and Portals 1 and 2. That's all Sansa symbolism. Sansa does the exact thing as Rohanne Webber. So Sansa has the not quite red hair. It's auburn, but close enough. It's reddish. Okay. And she has cat's eyes, if you remember. She is taken to the Eyrie. Now, the Eyrie is an ice temple place. It's got all the others symbolism. Everything is white marble with blue veins. Think of blue blood veins like the others have blue blood. It's like a tomb. It's literally frozen over and encrusted with ice when she goes there. So she is just like Rohanne Webber. She is a red-haired Nissa Nissa figure trapped against her will, kind of, in an icy, otherish land. And she's waiting for a hero to come help her, but she's not without agency on her own. She's also manipulating events to try to gain herself agency from inside of this other realm. So there's a similar story here with Nissa Nissa trapped inside the realm of the others, but still pulling strings and working things and turning the tables against her captors, who seems basically to represent Night's King. Peter Baelish is a Night's King figure. Of course, the baleful bard and the promised prince, all the Night's King figures have that Bael symbolism, and so does Peter Baelish, and he's abducting the Ice Moon Maiden, just like Rhaegar abducted Lyanna. So there you go. It's all right there, and it's a very good comparison between Rohan at Coldmoat and Sansa in the Vale. So Signs and Portals podcast for that information. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. This was a 2 hour and 40-minute live stream. I knew it was going to be longer than 2 hours, man. I knew it was going to take an hour to talk about the main story, and we spent more than that. And the symbolism was longer. I think my roommates might want to use their house again and stuff. So let's go ahead and say goodbye. Y'all been a lovely audience. Thank you for staying around this whole time. Obviously, you love Rohan Webber almost as much as I do. So, yeah, if you could date one person in A Song of Ice and Fire, Rohan Webber's a good pick. First of all, she's 25, unlike all the 14-year-old hotties running around the story. So, you know, although they're always played by 30-year-old actresses, but Rohan Webber is she's the safe thirst trap here. She's 25. She's got that strong, bossy female thing, which I like so much. So, yeah, I stand Rohan Webber. And hope you enjoyed the stream. And have a good Sunday. I'll see you again. Oh, yes, we might do a New Year's Eve stream. I think I'm going to. I'll let you know for sure. Thus concludes the Rohan Webber Thirst stream. Absolutely. There's no other way to end it. But, yeah, I'm thinking about doing a New Year's Eve thing since we can't go out and party and have fun like we normally do. So follow me on Twitter at @TheDragonLML. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Click the notification bell so you don't miss it. And then I'll see you on New Year's Eve and then again next Sunday and make another video. And you'll keep coming back here and we'll keep doing the thing. And that's how this works. And soon the quarantine will be over.